Chapter 1005. Kwafu, you hold this person back. The three of us will kill the Moon Guardian first. After realizing that they had encountered a tough opponent, Zhofeng decisively changed the battle plan. She asked Kwafu, who had the highest defense and was also the most tanky, to hold back Guhan, who was difficult to deal with. Then, they would focus their firepower on killing their real target, Yaoguang. It had to be said that this was a very reliable plan. After all, the Wu people's target had nothing to do with Guhan. Their target was Yaoguang. Now that the alcade only had less than 30% of its energy left, killing Yaoguang was indeed much easier than killing Guhan. Don't worry, leave it to me. I promise that this human won't be able to interfere with you. Kwafu immediately agreed. At the same time, his body began to grow rapidly, turning into a 6-story giant. Human, I didn't expect you to become so powerful in half a year. Kwafu's voice was like the roar of an airplane engine. However, half a year ago, you relied on that woman in the Guanghui amusement park to protect your life. Now that that woman is not by your side, you will not be able to get past my defense. And I am not the same person I was half a year ago. You have no idea how powerful we great sorcerers are. As soon as Kwafu finished speaking, countless branches shot out from the ground, all of them flying towards Guhan. Is that so? Guhan looked at the branches and a cold smile appeared on his face. Moon Guardian, you can't escape. Yaoguang was not stupid. When Guhan and the 4 Wu people's great sorcerers were fighting, Yaoguang immediately began to flee towards the Baihu Guardian mansion. Whether or not Guhan could survive under the siege of the 4 great sorcerers was none of Yaoguang's business. There was nothing wrong with Yaoguang's decision. After all, the safety of the Ju Tian Star battle formation was more important than anything else. However, before Yaoguang could run too far, Zhofeng, Zhuying and Fengbue, the 3 senior Magi who were known for their speed, quickly caught up with him. Yaoguang clearly understood that if he ran away, he would never be able to escape from the 3 senior Magi. Instead, he would expose his vulnerable back to them. Therefore, Yaoguang could only grit his teeth and stop his escape. He then turned around and faced the attacks of the 3 senior wizards with the Big Dipper sword. At the same time, Yaoguang saw the mountain-like Kwafu blocking Guhan's way to save him. Yaoguang clearly knew how difficult it would be for a senior magus like Kwafu to entangle a person. No matter how strong Guhan was, he might not be able to get rid of Kwafu in less than 10 minutes. Yaoguang did not need more than 10 minutes. He only needed dozens of seconds to die under the siege of the 3 senior Magi. At this time, Yaoguang could not help but let out a long sigh. Am I, Yaoguang, a genius, going to die here at such a young age? Why are you talking so much nonsense, human? Go to hell. Although one of Zhuying's 9 heads had been smashed by Kwafu, the remaining 8 heads were still extremely fierce, rushing towards Yaoguang. At the same time, pitch-black light balls were condensing on Zhofeng's wings. This was Zhofeng's unique killing curse, which could directly attack the opponent's soul. Meanwhile, Fengbue once again raised his Samadhi godly wind. These 3 completely different kinds of great power were rushing towards Yaoguang at the same time. Yaoguang could defend against one, but he could not defend against the second one. The situation was extremely dangerous. I can only take it head-on. At this critical moment, Yaoguang made the most correct choice. With Yaoguang's ability, it was impossible for him to dodge the attacks of these 3 senior Magi, which could be considered as the ultimate attack. The only way was to find a way to maximize his defense and minimize the damage to his body, so that he could take it head-on. As long as he could take it head-on, it would be impossible for the 3 senior Magi to use these 3 ultimate attacks again in a short period of time, and he would still have a chance to hold on until the Guardian of Baihu arrived. Therefore, Yaoguang instantly put the Big Dipper sword back into his hand, and then used the Big Dipper sword's advanced ability, the Big Dipper formation. The Big Dipper formation had 7 selectable enhancements, and one of the 7 enhancements was to strengthen his defense. Yaoguang used the Big Dipper formation with all his strength, and after raising his defense to the extreme, he closed his eyes and prepared to take on the impact of these 3 ultimate attacks. At this moment, Yaoguang was prepared for the energy of his body's protective shield to be depleted, or even directly broken. However, Yao Guang waited for a long time, but still did not take on the impact of the senior Maigai's ultimate attack. Lord Taiyin, you can open your eyes now. Gu Han's voice suddenly rang in Yao Guang's ears, and only then did he open his eyes, only to find that Gu Han had unknowingly stood in front of him. Gu Han's posture was naturally extremely relaxed, while the remaining 3 senior Maigai looked as if they had seen a ghost. Quafu, what's wrong with you? Didn't you say that you could hold him back? Zhu Ying's remaining 8 heads turned around crazily, and was about to give Quafu a good scolding, but to his surprise, he found that the mountain-like huge body had disappeared. Quafu, Zhu Ying's 8 heads swallowed their saliva at the same time. A senior magus could not possibly disappear into thin air, so there was only one answer, and that was, Quafu had already, retreat. The plan has failed. Let's retreat. While Zhu Ying was still swallowing his saliva, Zhou Feng had already realized that the situation had completely gone out of his control. This time, it was impossible to kill Yao Guang, and on the contrary, his life might be left here by this strange man. Therefore, Zhou Feng immediately decided to retreat. We humans are hospitable, please stay here, 3 senior Maigai. Gu Han snorted coldly, and with a graceful twist of his body, he inexplicably appeared behind Fengbo. At the moment when Gu Han appeared behind him, Fengbo felt his heart tighten, as if it was being squeezed by a palm. Fengbo knew that this was his soul warning him that he was facing the threat of death. Divine Wind Special Attack. At this critical moment, Fengbo could only use his life-saving killer move. The wind bag in Fengbo's hand instantly opened, and more than 10 gusts of divine Samadhi wind rushed out of the bag at the same time, and headed towards Gu Han who was behind him. Under normal circumstances, Fengbo's wind bag could only release 1 gust of divine Samadhi wind. Only when he was in a critical situation would Fengbo forcibly release a large amount of divine Samadhi wind to attack his enemy, at the cost of damaging the wind bag's origin. This was a move that Fengbo would only use when he had no other choice. Seeing the divine Samadhi wind engulfing Gu Han with a cloud of yellow sand, Fengbo let out a small sigh of relief. Just as he was leisurely thinking, there's definitely no human sword wielder who can escape from the attack of more than 10 divine Samadhi wind, Fengbo suddenly realized that there was a small, golden thing in his line of sight. What is this? Fengbo's eyes instinctively widened, wanting to see clearly what this small golden light was. However, at this moment, Fengbo felt a chill on his neck, and something warm spurted out from his neck. So it's a lotus. This was Fengbo's last thought before he lost consciousness. It turned out that the small golden light was a beautiful lotus. Brother, let's split up. As Fengbo's head flew up high, Zhou Feng recalled what happened half a year ago. At that time, she was also fleeing in a panic, but in the end, she still died under the countless sword lights. She did not expect that after only half a year, she would actually return to the exact same scene. She was also fleeing desperately, but the one chasing her was not a woman, but a man. Sister, run, I'll stop him for you. Zhu Ying did not listen to Zhou Feng's words. Instead, she suddenly stopped running and prepared to face this terrifying human head-on. Idiot! What are you talking about? Run quickly, you can't stop him. When Zhu Feng saw that Zhu Ying had stopped, he immediately howled with a bird-like voice. Ha ha ha, sister, don't forget that Zhu Ying has 9 heads. The time it takes for him to chop them off one by one is enough for you to escape. Zhu Ying's voice seemed to shake the whole world. Don't worry, sister. Even if Zhu Ying dies now, Zhu Ying will come back to life in no time. Zhu Ying. Zhou Feng did not try to persuade him anymore. Instead, she flapped her wings to the limit and used her fastest speed to dig out this part of the world. After flying for an unknown amount of time, Zhou Feng, who was struggling to escape, no longer had the strength to flap her wings. Like a freefall, she fell from the sky and fainted on the spot. She did not know how long she had been unconscious, but suddenly, she heard a concerned voice. Zhou Feng, what's wrong? Xingtian. It's you. Hearing this voice, the extremely exhausted Zhou Feng finally relaxed. With Xingtian by her side, even if that human chased after her, she would be able to keep her life. What's wrong with you guys? Have you completed the mission? Fengbo, where did Zhu Ying and the rest go? Xingtian quickly asked. Dead. Jiufeng's voice was no longer as loud as before. Instead, it became weak. Dead. Who died? Xingtian's voice became more urgent. Juying, Fengbo, Quafu. They're all dead. Jiufeng's bird face was filled with sorrow. What about the mission? Compared to the sad Jiufeng, Xingtian's behavior was completely different. He did not seem to care about Juying and the rest at all. He only cared about the important mission. You can say that it's done. Jiufeng nodded, then raised her head. What about your mission? Have you completed your mission? Of course. Hu Yi and I did it ourselves, how could we not complete it? Xingtian pointed behind him, and Jiufeng saw an expressionless Hu Yi walking over, carrying an unconscious girl on his shoulder. However, because the girl's face was stuck to Hu Yi's back, she could not see her face at all. Why are there only two of you? Where are Yusha and the rest? As soon as Jiufeng asked, she immediately reacted and said in a low voice, could it be that Yusha and the rest are also? It's no big deal, you'll see them again in less than a month. Hu Yi said coldly, as long as we catch this woman, even if we all die, it's worth it. Chapter 1006. Let me handle the last one. When Guhan was about to kill Juying, who was left behind, Yao Guang raised his voice and said, Military Governor, you've already helped me a lot. Let me handle the last one myself. You go after the great Magus Jiufeng, then I'll leave it to you. Guhan nodded. With a flash, he appeared behind Juying, then slapped hard on Juying's back with the sword. Juying's body was sent flying by Guhan, and landed right in front of Yao Guang. Juying, now we can have a fair fight. Yao Guang held the Tangshi sword in his hand, while the Big Dipper sword blocked Juying's way of retreat. Yes, it had always been a tradition for a sword master to fight together with his sword lady. Otherwise, how could a sword master's comprehensive strength be so much higher than an ordinary sword master's? Shameless human, if it wasn't for this guy, you would have died in my hands. How could you still have the face to fight a fair fight with me alone? Juying said with hatred, as if it was very fair for the four great Magi to fight Yao Guang alone. In terms of individual combat strength, as the two most powerful swordmasters in the Ju Tian Star battle formation, the Guardian of the Moon Star was more powerful than the Great Magi. Otherwise, there were 12 Great Magi, while there were only 2 Guardians of the Sun Star and the Moon Star. How could human beings successfully suppress the Wu people for hundreds of years? Since ancient times, the Guardians of the Sun Star and the Moon Star could completely suppress any Great Magi except for Xingtian in a one-on-one fight. If this Great Magus didn't have a companion to help him, there was an 80% chance that he would die in the hands of the Sun Star and the Moon Star. All in all, if it was the previous Great Shaman, Yao Guang was 100% sure that he could defeat the Great Shaman Juying. That was why Yao Guang suggested that he could defeat Great Shaman Juying alone. After all, if all the Great Magi were killed by Guhan, where would he, as the Guardian of Moontown, put his face? Unfortunately, Yao Guang seemed to have forgotten that the current Great Wizard Juying was not the Great Wizard Juying from 6 months ago. Instead, it was the Great Wizard Juying whose power had increased by a few times. After the two of them started fighting, even though he and the Big Dipper sword were attacking Juying together, they were still beaten up by the 8 heads of the Juying, and a lot of the energy of the shield was lost. Big Dipper formation. Yao Guang could tell that he was at a disadvantage. He had no choice but to use the Big Dipper sword's advanced skill, the Big Dipper formation. 7 stars appeared next to Yao Guang according to the arrangement of the Big Dipper, which greatly increased the attack power of Yao Guang and the Big Dipper sword. With the help of the Big Dipper formation, the situation started to turn around, and the scales of victory slowly moved towards Yao Guang. The remaining 8 heads of the Juying were chopped off by Yao Guang from time to time. When there were only 3 heads left of the Juying, the eyes of the 3 heads suddenly shone with a dazzling light, and they roared crazily, "Come on, let's die together." This was a desperate move of Juying. It could directly ignite the power stored in one's head, and in the end, form a huge explosion, blowing up the enemies around one and one together. To put it simply, the ability of Juying was to turn one's head into a powerful kick, and let one die under the brilliant fireworks. In your dreams. Yao Guang and the Wu people had fought for more than 2 years, and he already knew the skills of the Wu people, especially the skills of the Great Witch, like the back of his hand. Naturally, he had already predicted that Zhu Ying would use this kind of suicidal skill. Big Dipper Sealing Sword. The Big Dipper 7 stars around Yaoguang suddenly rushed into Zhu Ying's body. Zhu Ying, who was about to self-destruct, suddenly stopped. A gust of wind blew past, but the hair on Zhu Ying's body did not move in the slightest. It was obvious that this was not a normal stillness, but the entire space around Zhu Ying had been frozen. This was the ultimate skill of the Big Dipper sword, Big Dipper Sealing Sword. It could completely seal the enemy in space. Apart from their consciousness, everything else would be sealed, and they could only wait to be slaughtered. Moreover, this was an extremely high priority control skill, and could be immune to almost all control removal skills. In other words, once one was sealed by the Big Dipper Sealing Sword, any skill that could remove the seal would be ineffective. In the past 1,000 years, there were many Yuan Ku who thought that they had control removal skills, and did not take these control skills seriously. In the end, they all died under the Big Dipper sword. The duration of the Big Dipper Sealing Sword was usually determined by the sword essence of the wielder, and the strength of the sealed person. If it was a battle between people of the same level, the duration would be about 15 seconds. 15 seconds was enough time for Yaoguang to use the Big Dipper sword to easily chop off the remaining 3 heads of Zhu Ying. F***CK. Boss is mighty. Long live boss. After Yaoguang chopped off the remaining 3 heads of Zhu Ying, thunderous applause suddenly came from around him. Yaoguang, who was fully focused on the battle with Zhu Ying and had no time to care about anything else, realized that the guardians of the Emperor Star and the Main Star, such as the Baihu Guardian and the Black Tortoise Guardian, had all rushed over to provide support, and happened to witness the battle between Yaoguang and Zhu Ying. When they found out that Yaoguang was surrounded by 4 great wizards, they hurried over to provide support, but at the same time, they also felt a little sad. Based on past experiences, even if they could rush over in time to provide support, Yaoguang would probably be heavily injured. More importantly, among the guardians who dared to provide support, 4 or 5 of them would more or less die in the hands of the great wizards. It was just that they did not know if those who died were them. In the end, they did not expect that when they arrived, they found that Yaoguang had already killed 3 great wizards, and only the last Zhu Ying had not been killed. After witnessing Yaoguang's thrilling battle from start to finish, these sword-bearers were pleasantly surprised to find that their boss had single-handedly taken care of 4 great shamans. There was no need for them to risk their lives and shed blood at all. While they were relieved, they were also impressed by Yaoguang's powerful strength, and felt that the number 1 sword-bearer in the world was probably Yaoguang. Therefore, when Yaoguang killed the terrifying Zhu Ying with his sword, these guardians surged forward and lifted Yaoguang up high, throwing him into the air again and again, cheering for Yaoguang's victory. Put me down, put me down. Yaoguang struggled for a while, and finally broke free from the sword-bearers. When he was about to find Guhan to explain that it was Guhan who killed the 3 great wizards, he found out that Guhan had already left, and was nowhere to be found. How was it? Did you kill Jiufeng? Yaoguang searched through his personal terminal, and found that Guhan had quietly returned to his guardian's residence. Therefore, Yaoguang abandoned the sword-bearers who were planning to celebrate, and told them that they could return to their respective areas to join in the battle against the ordinary Wu people. After completely repelling the Wu people's attack, Yaoguang ran into Guhan's guardian's residence uninvited. TSK. So powerful. Uncle Yaoguang, who defeated 4 great wizards alone. As soon as Yaoguang entered the guardian's residence, he was interrupted by a sarcastic voice. Don't be rude. This isn't what your Uncle Yaoguang wanted, it's just that your good brother doesn't care about fame and fortune. Guhan's voice came from the room far away. I'm in the 2nd room on the 2nd floor. Brother Military Governor, I'm sorry, they have to rush back to participate in the battle against the Wu people, and I don't have time to explain. When the battle is over, I'll definitely explain to them clearly. Yaoguang's face was slightly red, and he was obviously hurt by Duyu's words. That's your business, you don't have to tell me. At that moment, Guhan had changed into a set of home pajamas, and he seemed to have taken a shower. The room was filled with a faint fragrance of shampoo. From this, it could be seen that the battle between Yaoguang and Zhu Ying had lasted for a long time. Otherwise, Guhan would not be able to take a shower so leisurely. I wonder why Master Yaoguang is here instead of commanding the battle. Guhan yawned. Did you catch up with Jiufeng? Did you kill her? Yaoguang asked. Speed is not something I'm good at, and Jiufeng has the fastest movement speed among all the senior Magi. She had decided to escape, and it was impossible for me to catch up with her, so I didn't bother to chase after her. Guhan continued to yawn. It doesn't matter if you didn't succeed, brother military governor. I, Yaoguang, have always thought highly of you, but today I realized that I've been greatly underestimating you. Yaoguang seemed to be trying to curry favor with him. After witnessing 3 senior Magi being killed by Guhan with his own eyes, Yaoguang had once again refreshed his view of Guhan. Even though fleeting time Lin had killed 3 great Magi before, he was still a magus. However, the senior Magi that Guhan had faced today were 3 to 4 times more powerful than the ones that Liuyan Ling had faced. Moreover, Liuyan Ling couldn't kill all 3 senior Magi in less than a minute. Could it be that Guhan's strength has already surpassed that of Liuyan Ling, the descendant of the Liuyan family? Yaoguang had such a frightening thought. I didn't know that I could do this. Guhan shook his head. After 3 months of special training by Kunzu in the game, Guhan knew that his strength had increased to a terrifying extent. However, he didn't expect that he could improve to this extent. 3 senior Magi, who were only 1 step away from the U-level Yuan Ku, died under his sword so easily. Although Guhan was already very powerful before he started training in the game, it was still impossible for him to become this powerful. Obviously, Guhan couldn't achieve this by relying on his own hard work in a short period of time. He completely relied on Kunzu's 3 months of special training to achieve this. Lord Kunzu, you've really given me a good gift. How can I have the face to defeat all your sword marks and soul seals in the future? Guhan complained in his heart, but his belief didn't change. In the future, he would still break into the Liuyan family alone and find all of Kunzu's sword marks and soul seals. Then, he would compete with him and completely erase all traces of Kunzu's Kunzu. Of course, apart from Guhan's superb swordsmanship, another extremely important reason was that the sword element in Guhan's body had reached 450,000 quarks. In terms of sword element alone, Guhan was already a powerful spirit sword level sword wielder. Without such a large amount of sword element, Guhan wouldn't have been able to kill 3 senior Magi, Yuan Ku, in just a minute. Is there anything else? If not, I'll be sending you off. Guhan didn't give Yaoguang any face at all. I've thought it through. With my current strength, I'm not qualified to assume the position of Taiyin Star's guardian. I want to transfer this position to you. Anyway, Halfway through his sentence, Yaoguang's personal terminal suddenly rang with urgent beeping sounds of alarm. It's from Hong Yu, and it's an emergency alarm. Did something big happen to her? Yaoguang hurriedly picked up the call. After hearing Hong Yu's first sentence, his entire body froze, as if he had been frozen by his Big Dipper sealing sword. Something happened to Miss Ling. This was the first thing Yaoguang said to Guhan after hanging up. Chapter 1007. With the help of Guhan, the Taiyin garrison managed to survive. However, the Sun Star was in big trouble. Although Lilith, as the Sun Star Guardian, managed to survive, the outcome was worse than if Lilith had died. This was because Liuyan Ling had been kidnapped by the Wu people. Although Lilith had guessed that the Wu people might attack her, she did not choose to be like Yaoguang and let her top swordbearers stay on standby instead of joining the battle at the front line. On the contrary, Lilith ordered all the swordbearers, regardless of their strength, to join the fierce battle. Therefore, the situation on the Sunstar battlefield was much more comfortable than the Sunstar battlefield. At the very least, there would not be a situation like what happened in the Baihu garrison, where all 5 reserve troops were deployed but still not enough. The reason why Lilith dared to do this was because Lilith was not afraid that she would die under the attack of the Wu people. This was because the Sunstar garrison had Liuyan Ling. After giving the order for all the guardians of the Emperor Star and the main star to join the battle, Lilith stayed with Liuyan Ling. Lilith's thinking was very simple. With Liuyan Ling's fighting ability, it would not be a big deal even if she had to face 6 senior sorcerers at the same time. As long as Liuyan Ling was by her side, the senior sorcerers sent to attack her would definitely not be able to kill her. On the contrary, they might all die in the hands of Liuyan Ling. Unfortunately, Lilith missed 2 points. First, she did not expect that the Wu people had already predicted the existence of Liuyan Ling in advance and sent 8 senior sorcerers to kill Lilith. Among them were the strongest senior sorcerers of the Wu people, Xingtian and Hu Yi. Second, Lilith did not expect the senior sorcerers to be several times more powerful than before. Not only did these 2 points put Lilith in an absolute crisis, but Liuyan Ling, who was responsible for protecting Lilith, was also in a desperate situation. Liuyan Ling was indeed very powerful. Even though there were 8 senior sorcerers, and even though the strength of these 8 senior sorcerers had increased by several times, Liuyan Ling was still able to fight on par with them and kill 6 senior sorcerers in the battle. Her strength could be said to be terrifying. However, the Wu people's target was not Liuyan Ling, but Lilith. These senior sorcerers would rather ignore Liuyan Ling's attack and hit Lilith with their own attacks. Although Liuyan Ling tried her best to protect Lilith and killed 6 senior sorcerers who were attacking Lilith with all their strength, Lilith was inevitably seriously injured in the end. Not only was her protective shield broken, even her famous sword, the Blood Demon Sword, was broken by Xingtian's attack. What was more insidious was that Hu Yi did not show up at this time. Instead, he was hiding in the void. When Lilith's Blood Demon Sword was broken, Hu Yi, who was hiding in the dark, immediately aimed at Lilith and shot an arrow that gathered all of his strength. Therefore, the worst situation had happened. Because this arrow contained all of Hu Yi's strength, the power of this arrow became extremely terrifying. Even Lilith, who had a full protective shield, did not have the confidence to take this sword head-on. Not to mention that Lilith had been seriously injured in the battle, and even her Blood Demon Sword was broken. The speed of this arrow was so fast that Lilith did not even notice it after it was shot. She was still foolishly standing in the same place. Lilith did not notice the arrow, but Liuyan Ling did. The speed of sound in the air was not as fast as the speed of the arrow. It was too late for her to warn Lilith with her mouth. At the last moment, Liuyan Ling could only use her body to block in front of Lilith and take the arrow head-on. Liuyan Ling did not dare to take the arrow head-on because she was stupid. She had the life-saving equipment of the Liu Nian clan, so Liuyan Ling was confident that she could take the arrow head-on and not die. The Liu Nian clan's equipment was indeed effective. Liuyan Ling did not die to the arrow, but Liuyan Ling's body still suffered a huge impact, so much so that Liuyan Ling fell into a trance. Xingtian, who had been watching from the side, immediately rushed to Liuyan Ling's side and captured Liuyan Ling without much effort. Hu Yi had already lost all his strength, and Xingtian was also heavily injured in the battle with Liuyan Ling. It would be impossible for him to kill Lilith in a short time, since she could still rely on the protection of a sword mistress. Coupled with the fact that the other guardians were rushing over, Xingtian could only choose to give up on killing Lilith and escape with Liuyan Ling. The situation at the Sun Garrison is terrible. The Sun Garrison Lilith has lost her sword mistress, which is equivalent to losing 80% of her combat power. She won't be able to be the Sun Star's guardian anymore. She'll probably have to leave Shanhai Pass early and return to human society. That way, the Sun Star Guardian Mansion will have to choose a new guardian, Yarrow Guang said worriedly. That's not the worst-case scenario. The worst-case scenario is what will happen to Miss Ling. Miss Ling has been kidnapped by the Wu people. How are we going to explain this to the Liu Nian family? Yao Guang's expression became even more bitter. Moreover, the Liu Nian family has always had only one descendant in each generation. If Miss Ling really dies in the hands of the Wu people, won't the Liu Nian family have no more descendants? I can't imagine what will happen if this reaches the Sword Committee. The entire human world will probably explode. God knows what the Liu Nian family will do to save their miss. I don't want to stay here anymore. Yao Guang's expression was as if he had drunk 1,000 times more strong coffee. Don't worry. Linlin won't die for a while. Gu Han's hand trembled uncontrollably. This was absolutely unacceptable for a person who used a sword. Since the Xingtian didn't kill her on the spot and chose to kidnap her, it means that they plan to use Ling to make a deal with us. There's no problem with Ling's safety now. We don't have to worry. Is that so? As long as Miss Ling's safety is guaranteed. Yao Guang heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Gu Han's words. Things have been going on lately. It seems like I should hand over the position of the Sun Garrison's garrison to you as soon as possible. Perhaps only with your strength can you stabilize Shanhai Pass. Are you really going to hand over the position of the Sun Garrison to me? Gu Han raised his head and looked into Yao Guang's eyes. Think about it carefully. Once you hand over the position to me, you will no longer be the king of the Ju Tian Star Battle Formation. It doesn't matter if I give it to you or not. Instead, I'm worried if you're willing to accept the position. Yao Guang also stared into Gu Han's eyes. I'm just a small garrison of the Shi*T Star. Do you think the garrison of the Emperor Star and the garrison of the Major Star will be happy if I take over the position? Will they agree to let me take over? Gu Han asked again. That's simple. The 3 Grand Magi died in your hands. This is an undeniable fact. The merit points from these 3 Grand Magi are enough for you to upgrade to the position of the Sun Garrison. As for whether they are willing to accept you, that's easy to solve. Yao Guang looked at the Juzi sword beside Gu Han's hand. As long as you defeat all of them, no one will oppose you. That's good. I'll take over your position. When will you pass it to me? Gu Han agreed very quickly. It was so fast that Yao Guang didn't expect it. I thought with your cold personality, military governor, you wouldn't be interested in taking over my troublesome position. I didn't expect you to agree so quickly. Yao Guang shook his head. How about this? I'll make some arrangements. 1 month later, I'll pass the Sun Moon Star Ju Tian Star's star banner to you. 1 month. That's too long. I'm afraid that undue delay will bring trouble. When Gu Han heard that there was still 1 month left, he instantly said with some dissatisfaction. Indeed, undue delay will bring trouble. How about half a month's time? Yao Guang satisfied Gu Han's request and directly shortened the time by half. It's still too long. Unexpectedly, Gu Han still expressed his objection. Then tell me, how long do you think is suitable? Yao Guang was helpless. He could only ask Gu Han for his opinion. Tomorrow. Gu Han took a deep breath. Tomorrow, you will hand over the Taiyin garrison to me. What? Tomorrow? Yao Guang immediately stood up from the bed. Isn't this a little too rushed? Being so impatient isn't like you, military governor. Being impatient is my personality. Gu Han smiled. If I wasn't impatient, how could I have completed the instance dungeon of King Arthur's betrayal before the Great Waves of Sea? Oh right, speaking of the Great Waves of Sea, their sect leader Ou Zhen still owes me a set of formation diagrams. This is still a little too rushed. 1 week. 1 week later, I will hand over the Taiyin garrison to you. Yao Guang carefully calculated for a while. All sorts of matters related to the delivery, all sorts of complicated matters, all of these require time. 1 week is the fastest speed. Furthermore, although 9 of the Wu people's great magi have been killed, the ordinary Wu people still haven't retreated. Who knows, they might be plotting something else. If we change the Guardian now, it will be easy for things to go wrong. Hihi, just now, you were the one who wanted to hand over the position to me. Now, you are also the one who is dragging your feet. Forget it, 1 week is 1 week. You should go and enjoy your life. Based on the current situation, this position is indeed not something you can take. You are too weak. Gu Han's words were merciless. I am too weak. Yao Guang carefully savored these words, and could only feel waves of awkwardness. Because he realized that compared to Gu Han, he was indeed pitifully weak. Even if he disregarded Gu Han and Liuanian Ling, he was still the strongest person in the entire Shanhai Pass. Weaklings should give up their positions. Chapter 1008. After all the great magi had been repelled, the Wu people no longer had any reason to continue fighting. They quickly retreated from the battlefront, and the entire Shanhai Pass seemed to have returned to its peaceful state. However, everyone who knew the truth knew that a huge storm was brewing behind the peace. Who knew how furious the Liuanian clan would be when they found out that their only successor had been captured by the Wu people. Unexpectedly, the Liuanian clan was not as agitated as Yao Guang had expected. They had only sent a message asking the Shanghai Pass Management Committee to do everything they could to help Liuanian Ling. Their calm attitude made Yaoguang wonder if the Liuanian Ling that had been captured was a fake Liuanian Ling. Guhan had guessed that the Liuanian clan would have such an attitude in advance, because Guhan had vaguely deduced something from Liuanian Ling's words. Liuanian Ling had always held an absolute trump card in her hand, and this trump card could probably even defeat a powerful opponent like Flood or Desolation level Yuan Ku. It would not be difficult to preserve one's life from the Wu people. As long as Liuanian Ling's life was not lost, it was not a big deal to the Liuanian clan. After all, they had an abundance of sovereign blood, and they could afford to use another 10,000 cubic centimeters of it. However, Liuanian Ling's matter was not the most urgent. The most urgent matter was the Sunstar garrison. The original Sunstar garrison's famed sword mistress, Lilith's famed sword, had been broken, and she could no longer take up the position of Sunstar garrison. She had voluntarily given up the position, and handed over her Sunstar Great Ju Tian Star Time banner. Although this ending seemed very miserable, Lilith also obtained a benefit. She could leave Shanghai Pass in advance and return to the outside world. This was a common rule in the mountain pass. Originally, every sword wielder had to stay in the mountain pass for 3 years. However, if an ancient sword wielder's ancient sword rank sword lady or famed sword wielder's famed sword rank sword lady were broken in battle, they would lose almost all of their strength. They would no longer be able to take on the role of a guardian. Naturally, they would not be allowed to stay in the mountain pass any longer. However, leaving Shanghai Pass in such a manner was not an outcome that any swordbearer in Shanghai Pass was willing to see. Once his sword lady broke, it would mean that his future as a sword wielder was over. If an ancient sword rank sword wielder's sword lady was broken, as long as they found all the broken pieces of the sword lady, there was a high chance that their artificial sword lady could be repaired. As for the innate sword lady, there was nothing she could do about it. She could only look for the best swordsmithing grandmaster of the human race to see if she could repair the innate sword lady. Otherwise, she could only leave it in the sword burial ground and wait for the power of the sword burial ground to slowly repair the broken innate sword lady. However, by the time the natural sword lady was repaired in the sword burial grounds, the original sword wielder's bones would probably have turned to dust. This was also the advantage of artificial sword ladies. Although they were not as strong as the natural sword ladies, they were much easier to repair. Back to the main point, Lilith sadly gave up her position as Sunstar Garrison's Sunstar Garrison. After a short discussion, the new Sunstar Garrison's Sunstar Garrison was unsurprisingly given to Hong Yu. After all, Hong Yu was the most experienced swordbearer in the Sunstar Garrison. She was also the strongest and had the most merit points. She deserved to be the Sunstar Garrison's Sunstar banner. Due to Liuanian Ling's sudden appearance, the position could have been given to Liuanian Ling. However, now that Liuanian Ling had been kidnapped, no one knew when she would be rescued. The position of Sunstar Garrison's Sunstar banner could not be left empty for too long. Therefore, 20 minutes after Lilith stepped down, Hong Yu planted the Sunstar banner on the Ju Tian Star and became the Sunstar Garrison's Sunstar Garrison. If the players in the game knew about this, they would be shocked. The two higher-ups of the Yaoguang sword faction had become the Sunstar Garrison and the Moonstar Garrison at the same time. This was an achievement that other sword factions could never achieve. The day passed with excitement. The entire Shanghai Pass was immersed in their own excitement. Apart from Yaoguang, who had mixed feelings, no one noticed what the badler-named T-Star Garrison's guardian was doing in the Shixing Garrison. As a matter of fact, after Yaoguang left, Guhan fell into a deep sleep. Guhan opened his eyes abruptly when the moon hung high in the sky. He jumped out of bed and put on all his equipment. At the same time, he carried all 6 of his sword maidens with him. "Are you going to save Miss Linlin?" When Ji Yuhan finished all this, the voice of Chijian sounded faintly in his mind. "Yes." Guhan nodded. "Didn't you say her life isn't in danger? Why did you disregard everything to save her?" Chijian didn't seem to want to let Ji Yuhan go, and continued to ask questions. At the same time, Guhan sensed that Chijian wasn't the only consciousness in his mind. There were 5 other consciousnesses hiding somewhere. The 5 consciousnesses were obviously Juzi, Qing Pin, Duyu, and the others. These unlucky kids were naturally interested in the gossip of the sword-bearer. In fact, Guhan could sweep all 5 consciousnesses out of his mind with a single thought. However, Guhan had no intention of doing so. Instead, he decided to try his best to explain the problem. There's always a what if in this world. I received a favor from Kunzu in the game. Although I will have to settle things with Kunzu in the future, I have to repay his kindness. At the very least, I need to make sure that Ling is safe. Moreover, this matter isn't as simple as it seems. I feel that there are other conspiracies lurking in the shadows. I should also go to the Wu people to gather some information. After all, this concerns the safety of the entire human race. Guhan gave many reasons. So, you're still doing this for Miss Ling, right? Although Guhan gave many reasons, Chijian seemed to only be focusing on Liuyan Ling. Well, all women were like that. The question of where their man went last night was more important than whether the world would be destroyed tomorrow. She's really just passing by. Why don't you believe me? Ji Yuhan tried to persuade him. Guhan, do you know? You never explain the same thing twice, but you've already explained it 3 times. Chijian's sentence sounded a bit unreasonable, but in fact, it was a huge blow to Ji Yuhan's heart. Not only was Guhan hit, but the other 5 eavesdropping consciousnesses were also hit. Guhan, don't tell me you've really fallen in love with that woman. Don't tell me you don't want Qingpin. Brother, I have a problem with that woman being my sister-in-law. Brother Guhan, do you need premarital guidance? Master, apart from the past water sword, the other 4 consciousnesses couldn't care less about hiding themselves anymore. They all jumped out and asked Guhan if he really liked Liuyan Ling. Such a chaotic situation almost made Guhan's head explode. Therefore, Guhan decided not to maintain his good master image anymore. He directly swept the 6 consciousnesses out of his mind. No matter what happens in the future, you will always be my sword maidens. This will never change. While expelling the consciousnesses from his mind, Guhan also said this to them. Late at night, the Wu people's tribe was quiet. The Wu people were a very strange race. Although they were a race of the lawful camp, the Wu people always liked to do wild and unruly things. Some ancient legends such as Quafu chasing the sun, Huyi shooting the sun, Xingtian fighting the heavens, Jiufeng causing chaos, and so on could indirectly prove the temperament of the Wu people. In the recent ancient times, it was said that the shadow of the Wu people was behind every change of dynasty. For example, behind the death of Xie Jie, it was said that Mai Shi was the intermediate sorcerer of the Hutu tribe, while Yi Yi of the Shongtang tribe was the great sorcerer of the Tianwu tribe. In the Great Qin Empire, it was said that the entire Great Qin was passed down from the bloodline of the Wu people. This was because the origin of the bloodline of the Qin people, Fei Lian, the ancestor of the Qin people, was the great sorcerer of the Wu people. The humans had sufficient evidence for this, because the great sorcerer of the Nese tribe in the Shanhai Pass was Fei Lian. However, it was also very inappropriate to say that the Wu people were a race of the chaotic camp. For example, after 10 o'clock in the evening, the entire Wu people fell into a deep silence. Apart from the Wu people who were in charge of the night watch, all the Wu people had fallen into a deep sleep. They were not like humans, who would have a large group of people who were excited even at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. The entire race was so punctual, which was not something that a race with a chaotic nature could do. All in all, the Wu people were a rather strange race. However, the Wu people's habit of sleeping early also made things very convenient for Guhan. Guhan only needed to avoid the hidden sentries to easily sneak into the Wu people's tribe. To be honest, avoiding the eyes of these sentries did not require any skill. Guhan could easily do this. The real difficulty was that Guhan did not know which tribe Liuyan Ling was imprisoned in by the Wu people. Ever since the great battle 6 months ago, the sorcerer tribe had gathered all the tribes that were scattered in different places together for the first time. They formed 12 extremely large tribes that were arranged according to the shape of the heavenly stems and earthly branches. Because the Wu people did not have tall buildings, all the Wu people lived in small tents in 2s and 3s. Therefore, each superlarge tribe of the Wu people occupied a large area, which was as large as the third ring of Yangjing City before the Great Calamity. Gu Han spent 2 hours to barely finish searching the tents of Liuanian Ling in the Zhu Rong tribe, but he failed to find any trace of Liuanian Ling. It would take him 1 to 2 hours to arrive here from the Xising garrison, and it would also take him the same amount of time to go back. When Gu Han finished searching the entire Zhu Rong tribe, the sun had already risen. If he searched the next tribe, he would definitely be discovered by the countless Wu people. Helplessly, Gu Han could only choose to retreat. In this way, Gu Han could only search one Wu people's tribe in one night. God knew how long it would take for Gu Han to find Liuanian Ling. Chapter 1009. There was a reason why Gu Han chose the Zhu Rong tribe as his first search target, because the Zhu Rong tribe had the Xingtian, the most powerful senior magus. In order to ensure that Liuanian Ling would not escape, the best choice was to let the Xingtian guard Liuanian Ling. Unfortunately, it seemed that Gu Han had guessed wrong. Liuanian Ling was not imprisoned in the Xingtian tribe. Gu Han had no time to search for other tribes, so he could only temporarily return to the Xising garrison, recuperating and preparing to continue the search the next night. As a result, the search lasted for 5 days. Gu Han had searched the 5 most powerful tribes among the 12 Zhuwu tribes, Zhu Rong, Shebi Shu, Dijiang, Hu Tu and Xian Ming, but the result was the same. He could not find any trace of Liuanian Ling. This inevitably made Gu Han a little suspicious. Since Liuanian Ling was not imprisoned in the 5 most powerful tribes, there were only 2 possibilities. One was that the Wu people did the opposite and imprisoned Liuanian Ling in the weakest tribe. Or Liuanian Ling was not imprisoned in a large tribe where the Wu people gathered, but in a special place. Therefore, on the 6th day, Gu Han decided to search directly in the weakest Tian Wu tribe. If he could not find any clues about Liuanian Ling, he could only take the risk of entering the tent of a senior magus and find a way to force the location of Liuanian Ling from the mouth of the senior magus. The result was mixed. Gu Han still could not find any trace of Liuanian Ling in the weakest Tian Wu tribe, but Gu Han made an unexpected discovery. That was, Gu Han actually found traces of human beings in the Tian Wu tribe. It was a piece of shiny tin foil left on the ground. Gu Han sneaked over and touched it in his hand to take a look. It turned out to be a small piece of tin foil used to wrap chewing gum. Putting the tin foil in front of his nose and smelling it, Gu Han could clearly smell the fragrance of chewing gum. It was obvious that this tin foil was not left behind a long time ago, but had just been peeled off and discarded here. Could it be that there are others like me who want to investigate Liuanian Ling's whereabouts? As soon as this thought appeared in Gu Han's mind, Gu Han rejected it. The reason was very simple. Even an expert like Gu Han had tried his best to hide everything in his heart when he sneaked into the Wu people's tribe, not daring to reveal even the slightest flaw. However, this person dared to directly throw a piece of tin foil used to wrap chewing gum in the Wu people's tribe. He was not afraid that the Wu people would find out about this tin foil, which proved that this person did not care about hiding his whereabouts in front of the Wu people. There were only 2 explanations for this. Either this person was invincible in the world and could beat all the Wu people by himself, and he was confident that he would not force the Wu people to kill Liuanian Ling to vent their anger. Or, this person had a close relationship with the Wu people. Gu Han did not forget the traitor who appeared in the battle 6 months ago, and until now, the traitor had not been found. Gu Han did not think that there was any sword-bearer in Shanhai Pass who could be more powerful than him. Obviously, this person was the traitor who humans had never been able to find. Why did he suddenly appear in the Wu people's tribe? Could it be that he and the Wu people were still brewing some conspiracy? However, this tin foil had been here for a period of time. Gu Han could not determine where the traitor had gone. It would be good if there was a dog at this time. If there was a dog, it could use the scent of the traitor left on the tinfoil, and then follow the scent all the way. It would definitely be able to find clues about the traitor. However, how could Gu Han sneak in here with a dog? Not to mention Anubis. Although that guy had a nose that was much more sensitive than a dog's, he was now in charge of secretly protecting Yuzhong City, which had lost its immortal swordbearer. Even if he was near Shanhai Pass, it was impossible for him to enter the Ju Tian Star battle formation. Hey, is there anyone among you who is particularly sensitive to smell? Guhan tentatively asked his sword lady. He did not expect that after a while, the past water sword would take the initiative to say that she was very sensitive to smell and could help Guhan search for the traitor's whereabouts. Thus, Guhan took the tin foil and hid in a hidden corner. Then, he released the past water sword and let the past water sword sniff the scent on the tin foil. Then, the past water sword crawled on the ground and sniffed around. Finally, it pointed to the northwest, indicating that the owner of the tin foil had gone in that direction. Naturally, it was impossible to determine the opponent's location once. It required the past water sword to continuously lie on the ground and search. This kind of behavior was naturally a noble and commendable behavior. However, the posture of the past water sword lying on the ground was very easy for one's imagination to run wild. Especially when the past water sword had a round, beautiful, and plump buttocks. Especially when this buttocks unconsciously stuck up because of the action of lying on the ground. It took the initiative to send itself in front of Guhan, and was level with Guhan's crotch. And as the past water sword's head kept moving on the ground, this beautiful buttocks also unconsciously swayed left and right in front of Guhan. It was a wonderful circle, as if inviting Guhan. In fact, at this time, Guhan only needed to slightly push forward to fully feel the beautiful buttocks. Together with the bright moonlight in the sky, a poem suddenly appeared in Guhan's heart: raise the buttocks to invite the bright moon, and the shadow becomes one person. I must make it clear in advance. Guhan didn't know that the original version of raise the buttocks to invite the bright moon, and the shadow becomes 3 people. The poem just now was completely Guhan's own creation. What the hell are you thinking about? The past water sword instantly sensed Guhan's despicable thoughts. It angrily turned its head and looked at Guhan. But the problem was that the past water sword only moved its head, and its body still maintained the posture just now. Coupled with those resentful eyes, the charm she exuded actually increased by a few notches. Nothing, just thinking about something. How is it? Did you smell anything? Guhan quickly changed the topic. Yes. The past water sword didn't want to talk about this topic anymore. Just now, it was just a moment of shame. Now, it quickly replied to Guhan, it's in that tent. The smell disappeared in that tent. Hearing the past water sword's words, Guhan immediately stuck to the side of the tent. His finger only lightly touched the tent, and he immediately sensed that there was no life in the tent. Thus, he brought the past water sword directly into the tent. In the end, he was shocked to find that there was an activated void gate in the tent. Through the void gate, he could clearly see that the other side of the void gate was already open. Guhan only needed to go through this void gate to reach the other place. Could it be that there is already a universe-level Yuan Ku among the Wu people? Seeing this void gate, Guhan was shocked. In order to open the void gate, it required the void power of a universe-level Yuan Ku. Since this void gate could be kept open for a long time, didn't it mean that there was already a universe-level Yuan Ku among the Wu people? Of course, there were still a lot of uncertainties. If the Wu people really had an existence equivalent to a universe-level Yuan Ku, then they didn't need to spend so much effort to arrange for spies. As long as this universe-level Yuan Ku made a move, most of the famed sword-rank sword-bearers would be like chickens and dogs in front of this universe-level Yuan Ku. Also, with the universe-level Yuan Ku's mysterious void power, he could kill all the guardians of the Sun Star and the Moon Star without anyone noticing. At that time, the Ju Tian Star battle formation would be broken, and they wouldn't need to fight as hard as they were now. However, it was better to be safe than sorry. To be cautious, Guhan would rather believe that there was such a universe-level Yuan Ku among the Wu people. Then, there would be a problem. If Guhan went through this void gate as a living person, he wouldn't be able to escape the senses of the void gate's master. At that time, he would have to face the universe-level Yuan Ku. Putting aside whether or not he could defeat the universe level, Guhan's plan to sneak in would fail at the last step. This was obviously not a worthwhile move. Therefore, after thinking for a while, Guhan decided not to go through this void gate. Instead, he would let the past water sword go through. The void gate couldn't sense dead objects. As long as Guhan let the past water sword go through the void gate in its sword form, it wouldn't attract the universe-level Yuan Ku's attention. At most, it would just pass by like a gust of wind. At that time, Guhan would only need to share Flowing Water's 5 senses to detect the situation on the other side of the Void Gate. As for why he chose the Past Water Sword to complete this task, the reason was simple. At this time, the Past Water Sword was right beside him in the form of a sword lady. Also, the Past Water Sword helped him in such an embarrassing position like a little bitch. However, at this time, he threw the Past Water Sword aside and replaced it with a sword lady. Do you think the Past Water Sword would feel comfortable? Moreover, there was a gap between the Past Water Sword and Guhan. Guhan didn't want to widen this gap from time to time. After all, the Past Water Sword was also his sword lady. This was a fact that couldn't be changed. Guhan told his idea to the Past Water Sword, and the Past Water Sword nodded in agreement. Therefore, Guhan turned the Past Water Sword back into its sword form and threw it directly to the other side of the Void Gate. Then, the Past Water Sword turned into a sword lady in mid-air. Guhan immediately hid his own body, and entered the Past Water Sword's body through the sword mark. After getting the Past Water Sword's consent, he successfully shared the 5 senses of the Past Water Sword, and saw the situation in the world where the Past Water Sword was. On the other side of the Void Gate was a lush jungle. With the help of Flowing Water's eyes, Guhan carefully observed the surroundings, and found traces of people walking not far away. Under Guhan's command, Flowing Water moved forward along these traces, and finally found a hot spring in front of them. 2 heads quietly floated above the hot spring. One of these 2 heads was a human head, and although the other head was also a human head, there were 2 sharp horns on his head. The 2 horns looked very special, like 2 sharp sickles. Seeing these 2 horns, Guhan knew who the owner of this head was. He was the strongest among the great Magi, Xingtian. Chapter 10:10. One of the 2 people in the hot spring was the most powerful great shaman, Xingtian. Then who was the other human head that was with the Xingtian? Could it be the traitor? Guhan pondered silently. Suddenly, he heard the Xingtian say impatiently, "I don't understand. Is it really that comfortable to soak in this ice-cold water? This is the best enjoyment I've ever had in my life. Back then, I spent over 10 years of painstaking effort to build a huge house in Mount Li, and I even dug a huge hot spring in that house. Unfortunately, I was too comfortable in the hot spring and accidentally lost control of my power. As a result, the entire house was burned down. Now that I think about it, it's quite a pity," another human said in a lazy tone. Mount Li? Guhan began to search for information in his mind when he heard this name. However, he could not find any memories related to Mount Li. Clearly, Mount Li, like many other places, had disappeared in the Great Cultural Collapse. However, it was strange that this place was clearly a place that had disappeared. Why did this human traitor feel so familiar with it? He had even built a big house on that mountain. Apart from the Liunyan family, there was no other human in this world who had the ability to build a big house outside of a headquarter city. So that unlucky man took the blame for you for 3,000 years. The Xingtian suddenly laughed. Yes. I didn't want him to take the blame for me. However, I died in his hands back then. It's only natural for him to take the blame for me. The human traitor laughed. These words sounded strange to Guhan. What did he mean by died in his hands back then? Could it be that this human was already dead? Then why did he still appear alive here? However, ever since Yuenko appeared in this world, all sorts of strange things could happen. Among Yuenko, there was no lack of existences who had mastered the art of resurrection. Could it be that it was these Yuenko who resurrected this dead human? But that didn't seem right. In the past, there had been humans resurrected by Yuan Ku. Even swordbearers had been resurrected by Yuan Ku. However, regardless of whether they were ordinary humans or sword-bearers, the sword essence in their bodies would dissipate completely after they were resurrected. It might be possible for such a resurrected person to disguise as an ordinary human, but it was impossible for them to disguise as a sword-bearer. More importantly, this human actually referred to himself as we. Since ancient times, only the various Gendi in history had been able to refer to themselves as we. Of course, Not all Gendi like to refer to themselves as we. At the very least, Yi Qing had never referred to himself as we in front of Guhan. Emperors before the Great Calamity had naturally died without even their bones. Could it be that this person was a certain Gendi in history? Just like the Ming Yuan Gendi who had betrayed humanity in order to pursue immortality. Of course, this was naturally impossible. Apart from the Ming Yuan Gendi, all the other Gendi had clear records. Their sword ladies were also kept in the sword pavilion. There was only one Ming Yuan Gendi since ancient times. There was definitely no second one. Even if there was a hidden Gendi who had betrayed humanity, as long as he stepped into the Ju Tian Star battle formation, the Ju Tian Star battle formation would immediately collapse. There was no need for any conspiracy. As for the possibility of resurrecting Gendi, it was even more ridiculous. Every Gendi clearly knew how long they could exist in this world. This time could even be accurate down to the second. That was why Gendi would take the initiative to ascend to immortality before the end of their lifespans. They would not even leave a single hair in this world, let alone leave behind a corpse for Yuan Ku to resurrect. Actually, there was one last possibility. This person did not have the right to call himself emperor. He was just envious of this title and used it to comfort himself. This was actually the most likely possibility. No matter which possibility it was, this human's identity was still a huge question mark. Was he really a human? Was he really a traitor hiding in the Shanhai Pass? If they wanted to uncover this mystery, they naturally had to continue eavesdropping. The Xingtian continued, according to your plan, that human with the bloodline has already been imprisoned in the land of Zhu Wu. How are your preparations going? It's still within this emperor's plan. The human who called himself emperor said, the key is on your side. It's not that easy to trap the people of the Liunian family. If something goes wrong in the land of Zhu Wu and Liunian Ling escapes, then our plan will be in danger. I know that. We lost 6 brothers in order to capture her, so we don't dare to let our guard down. Right now, Zhou and Hu Yi are watching her in the land of Zhu Wu. After I'm done talking to you, I'll head over to the land of Zhu Wu. With the 3 of us watching her, she won't be able to escape. Me. You'd better be careful. It's not like you don't know about the Liunian family's foundation. Back then, even an invincible existence like the ancestor god was sealed by fleeting time's yoke. Who knows if that Liunian Ling still has other trump cards? By the way, did you take away her dimensional pocket? Of course. I've already placed her dimensional pocket in an absolutely safe place. It's a pity that we can't open it no matter what. Otherwise, I'd be able to see what treasures the Liunian family left behind for their descendants. Xingtian smiled. Very good. Juying, how long will it take for Gonggong and the others to come back to life? The human nodded and asked. Juying. Gonggong was a great magus. This human was clearly asking when the 9 great magi who died at the hands of Guhan and Liunian Ling would come back to life. Soon. These days, Zhu Wu's essence blood has been boiling. The speed at which they're coming back to life has far exceeded my expectations. I thought that it would take them 5 months to come back to life, but it seems that they'll be able to return to this world in 3 days at most. Very good. If that's the case, we still have time. The human nodded. Tomorrow is the day that the position of the moon guard will be passed to that Guhan. I will try my best to delay it until all of our brothers are resurrected. Before that, I'm afraid I won't have the time to come here to see you. When that time comes, I hope that you'll strictly follow my plan and not make any mistakes. This person must be the traitor. Hearing this, Guhan could already confirm that this person was the traitor hiding among the swordbearers. Furthermore, his status was not low, and he knew many things about the Shanhai Pass. Only the Imperial Star, the main star, and the guest star of the Shanhai Pass would know that Yaoguang would pass the position of the moon guard to him tomorrow. This human traitor must be a famous swordbearer. No matter if he was at a higher or lower level, he would not be able to sit in the position of the Imperial Star, the main star, and the guest star. But this way, the identity of this traitor became very difficult to figure out. He could be brothers with the great shaman of the Wu people, and was used to calling himself I. At the same time, He was a famous sword-bearer on the surface. Is there a need to be like this? Xingtian's voice was vaguely disdainful. Our plan has been carried out so perfectly, and most of the steps have already been completed. Now, we're only one step away. Actually, I feel that even if your identity is exposed, even if our plan is completely leaked to the humans, they won't be able to stop our plan. Victory is already ours. How big was my empire back then? How stable was my empire back then? Who in the world didn't crawl and tremble at my feet? But in the end, in a mere 3 years, my empire was taken by a small county's public security bureau chief. Do you really think that there's anything in this world that's foolproof? The person said. This person's tone was completely lecturing, and Xingtian, who was being lectured, did not retort, but instead allowed the person to lecture him. If people who were familiar with Xingtian's temper saw this scene, they would probably be so shocked that their mouths could not close. That Guhan's strength is too terrifying, and his growth is too fast. He's the most dangerous thing in this Ju-Tian star battle formation. What's more terrifying is that his intelligence is not inferior to mine at all. I even feel that everything we've done will still be ruined by his hands in the end. He did not expect this traitor to think so highly of Guhan. Guhan thought that in the entire Ju-Tian star battle formation, other than the swordbearers who came in with him, only Yao Guang knew his true strength. In the end, he did not expect this traitor to completely see through him and treat him as the biggest hidden danger to guard against. No matter how powerful she is, can she be more powerful than the descendant of the Liu Nian family? In the end, she was still captured by us. Xingtian's tone was still disdainful. Don't forget that Quafu and the other two didn't even last a minute in Guhan's hands, the human traitor said sternly. That's because Quafu and the others are useless. This time, I have obtained the godly power of Master Zhu Wu, and my strength has reached the universe level, Yuan Ku, or some deity-level swordbearers. That guy named Guhan is definitely no match for me, Xingtian said proudly. Power, power, power. You only have power in your head, the human traitor shouted at Xingtian. Remember, from a distance, humans were able to defeat us and become the protagonists of the prehistoric world. From a closer perspective, humans were able to trap us in this damn Ju-Tian star battle formation for such a long time not because they are stronger than us, but because they know how to use their brains. This is also the most important thing I learned when I hid among the humans. Sometimes, a good brain is better than 10 of your fists, Xingtian. Tell that guy named Guhan to come out. I want to see if his brain is harder or my fists are harder. Xingtian suddenly stood up from the water and looked around with his sharp eyes. Are you crazy? How could Guhan be here? The other person also came out from the hot spring and finally exposed himself in front of Guhan. Chapter 10-11. When Guhan saw the face, he was extremely excited because he felt that he could finally find the traitor hidden among the humans. However, when Ji Yuhan saw the face clearly, he fell into a state of helplessness. This was a face that Ji Yuhan had never seen before. Guhan did not dare to say who all the swordbearers were, but Guhan had secretly memorized the faces of all the famous swordbearers in Shanhai Pass. If this traitor was one of the famous swordbearers, then Guhan would definitely be able to recognize him immediately. However, this face did not belong to any of the faces that Guhan remembered. There were only 2 possibilities. Either this traitor was not a famous sword-bearer, or this traitor had hidden his true appearance, or the face that he saw in Shanhai Pass was still fake and this was the traitor's true appearance. Guhan was more inclined to the second answer. I'm not crazy. Xingtian pushed the traitor away. If that Ji Yuhan is really as intelligent as you say, and has the luck to ruin our entire plan, then we will have to deal with him. Does he have the ability to guess that we would meet here? Does he have the ability to appear here? Guhan, show yourself if you have the ability. Show yourself if you have the ability. Eavesdrop on our conversation if you have the ability. Show me your intelligence and luck. Xingtian continued to clamor loudly. How could he possibly appear here? Not to mention the humans, even the other Wu people did not know that we would meet here. It's impossible for him to appear here. The human traitor could only say helplessly when he saw Xingtian going crazy. However, Xingtian ignored the traitor's words and continued to clamor for Guhan to come out and meet him. Seeing this, Guhan suddenly had an urge to jump out and tell Xingtian to stop clamoring. He was really eavesdropping on their conversation. Of course, until the end, Guhan did not do such a stupid thing. Instead, he hid himself even more discreetly so that the Wu people would not be able to find his whereabouts. After going crazy today, the traitor patted Xingtian's naked upper body and said, "Open the door and let me go back. The sun is about to rise. Damn it, I did not open the door for you." After calming down, Xingtian still grumbled unhappily. However, he still opened the void door for the traitor. The traitor directly entered the void door and left. Seeing this scene, Guhan secretly felt that it was a pity. If the traitor had chosen to walk back, Guhan might have been able to find out the traitor's true identity by tracking him. However, the traitor went back through the void door. Of course, Guhan could not pass through the void door in front of Xingtian to track the traitor. He could only helplessly watch the traitor leave his sight and eventually disappear on the other side of the void door. After the traitor left, Xingtian kicked down a few trees as if to vent his anger. Then, he went through the void door and returned to the Heavenly Wu tribe. Of course, at this time, Guhan had already left the tent. His consciousness had also returned to his body. Then, he chased after the past water sword and finally arrived at the place where Xingtian and the traitor had soaked in the hot spring. He came here to see if he could find any other clues about the traitor. Unfortunately, Guhan searched the entire nearby area and even swam in the hot spring. However, he did not find any valuable clues. In the end, he could only return to the Shising garrison. However, it could not be said that Guhan did not get any valuable information. At least, Guhan confirmed that Liuyan Ling was imprisoned in a place called Zhu Wu. Although Guhan had never seen this name in any information, he could guess that this place must have a close relationship with Zhu Wu. It was very likely that this was the place where the blood of Zhu Wu was hidden. At the same time, Guhan also confirmed the existence of the traitor. This traitor must be one of the swordbearers of the Taiyin garrison, and it was very likely that he was one of the swordbearers of the Taiyin garrison. Because only the swordbearers of the Taiyin garrison would know that Yao Guang was going to pass the position of the guardian of the Taiyin Star to him tomorrow. At this time, the Sun Star garrison was still in a mess. Except for a few special people, no one was interested in the matters of the Taiyin Star garrison. Those senior Magi who had died in the hands of Ji Hao and Liuyan Ling would be resurrected in 3 days. Including the previous week, only 10 days had passed. The senior Magi of the Wu people could be resurrected in only 10 days. If this news got out, the entire Shanghai Pass would definitely fall into panic. Previously, the resurrection time of the senior Magi of the Wu people of 1 to 3 years was already difficult for the swordbearers to handle. This time, if they could really be resurrected in only 10 days. To some extent, the number of senior Magi of the Wu people was equivalent to more than 30 times. There was no need for the ordinary Wu people to do anything. As long as these senior Magi carried out a massacre in the human territory every 10 days with the thought that they were going to die, all the human swordbearers would probably die in a few months' time. The last and most important piece of information was that the traitor of the Wu people wanted to delay the day when Yao Guang passed the position to him so that he could buy time for the resurrection of the senior Magi. According to Yao Guang's arrangement, the ceremony of passing the position to the Wu people would be held tomorrow. Of course, the senior Magi of the Wu people would not be resurrected tomorrow. Therefore, the traitor would definitely try his best to delay this matter. The ancients often said that the more one spoke, the more mistakes one would make. Since it was easy to give himself away by talking too much, it was impossible to do too much. Guhan was certain that the traitor would definitely cause some trouble tomorrow. As long as he kept a close eye on every corner, he would definitely find the traitor's flaws. Of course, although Guhan was powerful, it was naturally unrealistic to rely on one person to monitor every place. Therefore, in the end, Guhan still had to ask for help from a good helper. Jina-chan, I'll leave everything to you. Please help me monitor all the surveillance systems in the entire Shanghai Pass. Don't let go of even a single surveillance camera. If it's possible, I hope that you can also monitor the personal terminals of the sword bearers. If you discover any abnormalities, inform me immediately. Guhan instructed Tomono Kakaze through his personal terminal. Yes, that's right. The helper that Guhan could ask for help was naturally Tomono Kakaze. Other than that, there was no one else that Guhan could ask for help. In fact, there was no one else who could do what Tomono Kakaze had done. This was actually a very outrageous matter. It was a serious violation of Tomono Kakaze's principles as the highest intelligence. In the past, Tomono Kakaze would most likely reject Guhan's request. However, the problem now was that Tomono Kakaze owed Guhan a huge favor. After Guhan successfully passed all of Kanzu's training, Guhan specifically asked Kanzu to think of a way to prevent Tomono Kakaze from being formatted. After hesitating for a while, Kanzu finally agreed to help Tomono Kakaze. In the end, no one knew what Kanzu did, but the Research Institute finally decided not to format Tomono Kakaze anymore. At the same time, this matter was forever sealed and became the highest SSSS level secret. It was a secret that only Gendi had access to. Even Tomono Kakaze herself did not have the right to access it. In any case, Tomono Kakaze's life was saved by Guhan. There was no reason for her not to repay his kindness. Favors were really a wonderful thing. They often appeared together with one's personality. Even a machine intelligence like the highest intelligence was no exception. They could even break the preset rules for favors. Guhan only told Tomono Kakaze about this matter. He did not tell anyone else, not even Yaoguang himself, Guhan. If he told too many people, the risk of the secret being leaked would increase. Therefore, Guhan could only bury this secret in his heart. He wanted to find the traitor by himself. Time flew by like flowing water, and a day passed quickly. Early the next morning, Ji Han, who had just gotten up, received an order to come to the Taiyin Starguard Mansion, which required Ji Han to arrive at the conference room of the Taiyin Starguard Mansion before 10 a.m. to participate in the post-war summary meeting. This meeting was a routine meeting after every war. Just like the meeting 6 months ago, the main task was to summarize the various experiences of the war. At the same time, the sword-bearers who made outstanding contributions in the war would be praised and various rewards would be given out on the spot. All in all, this was a meeting where all the sword-bearers could effectively relieve their fatigue after the intense and painful war. At the same time, generous rewards were used to motivate everyone. Theoretically, this meeting should be held the day after the war ended. However, as Yaoguang planned to hold the succession ceremony during this meeting, the meeting was delayed until now. 10 minutes before 10 a.m., Guhan appeared at the entrance of the Taiyin Garrison's conference room. Guhan saw Ku Rokin and Leslie Dracula standing at the entrance of the conference room from afar. They seemed to be waiting for something. "Guhan, you're finally here." Seeing Guhan, Leslie Dracula and Ku Rokin immediately greeted him. It seemed like they were waiting for Guhan. Guhan had a special relationship with the two of them. It was not surprising that they were waiting for him at the entrance. However, Ku Rokin and Leslie Dracula had an interesting expression on their faces. They seemed to want to say something, but they were hesitant and worried. "Guhan, don't say anything after you go in. Don't get into any conflict with those people before the meeting ends. Otherwise, you'll fall into their trap," Leslie Dracula whispered into Guhan's ear. Trap? Guhan was stunned. He thought it was a trap that the traitor had set up for him. This caused Ji Han to be in disbelief. Could it be that the traitors were so arrogant that they could brazenly frame him? However, Guhan quickly realized that it was definitely not a trap set up by the traitor. It was a trap set up by the other famed sword-level sword-bearers. Although he had been in Shanghai Pass for 6 months, he had been staying in the game for the past 6 months. His reputation and strength had not spread. Even the fact that he had killed 3 great wizards was accidentally attributed to Yaoguang. When the famed sword-level sword-bearers heard that he was about to take over the position of the Lunar Star from the lowest position of the Guardian of the T Star, they were naturally unhappy. They wanted to embarrass him. Therefore, there must be a trap that they had set up for him in the conference room. It's fine. It's not certain who's going to set whom up. Guhan said to Ku Rokin and Leslie Dracula with a smile. Chapter 10-12. Guhan calmly brought Leslie Dracula and Ku Rokin into the conference room. However, it was different from what Leslie Dracula had expected. The atmosphere in the conference room was unexpectedly harmonious. Everyone was happily chatting with the people around them. None of them paid attention to Guhan, as if they didn't care about Guhan at all. That's strange. I clearly heard them whispering about how they were going to deal with Guhan. Did I hear it wrong? Seeing this scene, Leslie Dracula muttered to herself in confusion. No. A newbie stole the position of Lunar Guardian. Even if they are noble enough to not cheat me, they shouldn't be as indifferent as they are right now. At the very least, they should be glaring at me. Guhan smiled disdainfully. Their natural behavior right now is the most unnatural. Look, none of them are looking at me right now. In fact, they have 100 pairs of eyes in their hearts, and all of these 100 pairs of eyes are staring at me. Ji Yuhan's words were not spoken in a whisper, but in a loud voice that did not hold back at all. As soon as Guhan's voice fell, the atmosphere in the conference room dropped by more than 100 degrees. The entire space seemed to have frozen, and no one spoke anymore. Therefore, the position of the Lunar Guardian should be taken by me. Look at these people, they have clearly prepared such a gift for me, but they don't even have the courage to look at me. Wouldn't passing the position of the Lunar Guardian to them be spoiling the great plan? After Guhan said this, no one dared to pretend to be silent anymore. Everyone glared at Guhan. If eyes could catch fire, then the entire conference room would probably be burning. That's more like it. Guhan smiled. Let me see what you've prepared for me. After saying that, Guhan looked around and found that there didn't seem to be anything unusual in the conference room. The floor was clean and tidy, especially the tiles on both sides of the conference room. They were wet, and it was obvious that they had just been mopped. The chairs were also neatly arranged. Even the chair closest to Yaoguang was reserved for Guhan. There didn't seem to be any strange mechanisms or traps waiting for Guhan in the conference room. It seems that everyone is very friendly to me. I feel a little bad that they purposely dragged this aisle. Guhan walked to the aisle and said with a smile. This aisle was the only way from the entrance of the conference room to Guhan's seat. This was the only way that Guhan could reach his seat. If Guhan walked to the entrance of this aisle, he would not continue to walk in. Instead, he looked at the slightly wet aisle and said, I wonder if everyone knows how to distinguish between water and glue. When the word glue came out of Guhan's mouth, some of the sword-bearers could not help but tremble. The word glue touched on the secrets in their hearts. In fact, it's very easy to distinguish. Water flows, but glue can't, especially 1502 glue. It looks so clear that you can see the bottom, but in fact, it's a pool of dead water. As soon as Guhan's voice fell, the atmosphere in the entire conference room instantly became extremely awkward. No one expected Guhan to see through their carefully laid trap at a glance. So they disguised the glue on the ground as if it had just been dragged. Leslie Dracula only then realized what the trap these sword-bearers had set for Guhan. As everyone knew, 1502 glue was the product of 502 glue after 10 generations of upgrading. It had the adhesion ability comparable to steel. This 1502 glue looked like ordinary water when it was not used, but once it came into contact with something, it would immediately stick to it. Even if an armored vehicle drove at full speed, it would not be able to separate these two things. If Guhan really stepped on it, then Guhan would immediately be like a fly stuck to the ground, unable to move. If Guhan accidentally took too big a step and his shoes were too loose, then Guhan's feet might directly fall out of his shoes, and then his whole body would fall to the ground. At that time, Guhan's whole body would be like a tile on the aisle. It was possible that Guhan would have to give up a layer of flesh to be able to get out of 1502. By that time, how would Guhan have the face to take over the position of the Sun Moon Guardian? Unfortunately, these sword-bearers had somewhat underestimated Guhan's eyesight. Otherwise, it was very likely that they would have succeeded. Do you know what kind of image you have in my eyes now? Guhan, who had seen through all this, seemed to have no intention of letting these sword-bearers off. He used a tone of lecturing these sword-bearers. Childish, You guys are really childish to the point of being cute. These are just little tricks that kindergartners use to tease their classmates. I didn't expect a dignified sword-bearer to also use these kinds of tricks that kindergartners would use. Please, this is Shanhaiguan where you can die at any time, not a kindergarten where you can play around happily. Next time, please use more brains and think of more mature methods. Otherwise, if the people of the Sunstar find out, who knows how they will laugh at us. At this point, Guhan sneered, you guys don't care, but I, the Sun Moon Guardian, can't not care. Damn it. I don't need you to teach me a lesson. Finally, someone could not stand Guhan's infuriating words. He angrily slammed the table with both hands and stood up. He slammed the table with both hands and scolded loudly, surnamed GU, it's fine that someone tipped you off, but you actually have the cheek to teach us a lesson here? You haven't even determined the position of the Sun Moon Guardian yet, and you dare to speak so shamelessly here? Do you have any shame? If you know what's good for you, get out of here immediately and go back to your Shising garrison to be a pile of *T. This sword-bearer's words were like a spark, instantly igniting the entire conference room. Dozens of sword-bearers slammed the table and stood up, pointing at Guhan's nose and scolding him angrily. For a moment, the entire conference room was filled with chatter, a stark contrast to the previous hell-like atmosphere. At least a dozen people used different methods to curse at Guhan, mocking Guhan from the beginning to the end. At this moment, it showed the quality of the sword-bearers, as well as their attitude towards the person and not the matter. Although there were dozens of people cursing at Guhan at the same time, the target of their curses was limited to Guhan. None of them extended their curses to Guhan's relatives. Otherwise, if they were in front of ordinary people, they would have cursed at all 18 generations of Guhan's ancestors. Of course, these sword-bearers also had to be thankful that they did not curse Guhan's relatives. Otherwise, it would be hard to guarantee that Guhan would not let them leave the conference room in one piece. Guhan's relatives had always been Guhan's biggest reverse scale. The fact that Guhan was willing to challenge the Liu Nian family for the sake of the Black Tortoise was the best proof of that. Don't argue with me. You guys are especially childish. Faced with the sword-bearer's curses, Guhan maintained a calm expression. Firstly, I've already said it. Only childish children would scatter 1502 on the ground. Secondly, do you really think that no one can walk over this 1502? Wait, what does this person mean? Before the sword-bearers could react to what Guhan was saying, Guhan directly stepped onto the path filled with 1502. All the sword-bearers widened their eyes in shock. They did not expect Guhan to step onto the path even though he knew that the ground was covered with 1502 after discovering their scheme. You're courting death. Some of the sword-bearers had such a joyful thought. Just as they were about to enjoy the sight of Guhan stuck to the ground like a fly, they were shocked once again. The 1502 on the ground were like real water, allowing Guhan to walk over easily. His footsteps did not stop at all. By the time the sword-bearers reacted, Guhan had already reached his position at the very front. This doesn't make sense. Could he have flown over? The sword-bearers sitting at the side of the path immediately began discussing in disbelief. In their opinion, the only way to pass through so easily was to fly. That Guhan seemed to have walked over, but in reality, he must have used some special method to fly over the surface of the 1502 without actually touching it. If Guhan really flew over, then how could they explain the footsteps? Even an idiot would know that there would not be footsteps if he flew over. Look, there are footprints there. One of the sword-bearers pointed at a certain spot in the path and exclaimed. The other sword-bearers immediately looked in the direction that the sword-bearers were pointing at. Indeed, there was a very obvious footprint on the watermark of the 1502. There's one here too. There's one here too. Very soon, the others also found the footprints on the path. At this time, even the thickest person would not have the face to say that Guhan flew over. But if Guhan really walked over, then why was he not stuck to the 1502? The sword-bearers racked their brains but could not find the answer to this question. F***CK. We must have bought fake goods. These 1502 are all fake. The sword-bearers who were the first to slam the table slammed the table again and stood up. Then, He took a step and walked to the path that Guhan had just walked over. As he walked, he shouted, "Fake! They're all fake." The result was obvious. When the sword-bearers took a step on the path, his leg seemed to be forcefully pulled by something. In order to prove that the 1502 was fake, the sword-bearers used a lot of strength to walk. As a result, he lost his balance and one of his feet slipped out of his shoe. It looked like he was about to fall on the ground full of 1502. Chapter 10:13. Go. The horrified swordsman watched his face getting closer and closer to the ground. Just as he was about to merge with the wet 1502, he suddenly felt his waist being hit by something. His whole body was knocked away like an ice pot, and he was sent flying. When he finally landed on the ground, he was already far away from the passageway, narrowly avoiding the fate of becoming a human brick. Which brother is it that helped us? I, Li Yutian, am eternally grateful. It turned out that the rash swordsman was called Li Yutian. It sounded like a scholarly name. Who would have thought that it would belong to such a burly man? Li Yutian had thought that it was one of the other swordsmen who had helped him out of the passageway to save his face. However, when Li Yutian's gaze swept across the swordsmen of famed sword rank, he did not see any of them showing an expression of "I saved you." On the contrary, all the swordsmen subconsciously looked at Guhan, while Guhan looked back at them with a smile. At this moment, even Li Yutian knew that the one who had saved him was not another swordsman, but Guhan, whom he had just scolded. Li Yutian did not know what to do. He wanted to express his gratitude to Guhan, but when he thought of how he had insulted Guhan, he felt that he was too ashamed to say thank you. In the end, he could only bow to Guhan, then sullenly return to his seat, not saying another word. At the same time, the other famed sword rank swordsman's evaluation of Guhan began to rise. Previously, they had thought that Guhan was just a useless piece of trash who had obtained Yao Guang's approval through flattery and took over the position of Lunar Star's guardian. Now, they vaguely understood that Guhan might not have obtained his position through flattery. On the contrary, Guhan had obtained Yao Guang's approval through his own strength. Not to mention, just the ability to walk freely on 1502 alone was something that none of the famed sword rank swordsmen present could do. As a result, the entire conference room fell into silence once again. No one said a word as they silently pondered what kind of attitude they should take next. At this moment, Yao Guang, who should have appeared earlier, finally appeared in the meeting room. He felt that the silent atmosphere in the meeting room was a little strange, so he smiled and asked, "What's wrong with all of you? Why do you have to remain silent when there's such a good meeting and award?" Silence. The meeting room was still silent, and no one relaxed because of Yao Guang's joke. "All right. Then let's start today's meeting right away." Yao Guang shrugged. "Everyone had a hard time in the previous battle. I heard that many of our brothers were seriously injured and had to lie in the medical bay for 2 to 3 days. There were also some brothers who unfortunately left us forever. First of all, we would like to mourn for them. Now, all of you, stand and observe 3 minutes of silence." This was a necessary part of the post-battle summary meeting, and it was something that was not allowed to be joked about. Every swordsman, including Guhan, stood up with a heavy heart. They lowered their heads and sincerely mourned for the swordsmen who had sacrificed themselves. Their mourning came from the bottom of their hearts, because everyone knew that the next person to be mourned might be themselves. 3 minutes was a short time, but when the 3 minutes were over, there were still people who stood still and continued to mourn. "All right. It's time to talk about some happy things. Everyone has made outstanding contributions in the battle, and all of your contributions must be rewarded. I will now commend everyone." At this point, Yao Guang suddenly sighed. "I'm guessing this will be the last time I'll give everyone a commendation. Boss." His words obviously touched the hearts of the other swordsmen. They all looked at Yao Guang with concern. "Boss, it's not even 3 years yet. Stop talking, I will give everyone the awards." Yao Guang waved his hand and began to announce the various rewards that the famed swordsman deserved. Although the scale of the battle this time was much larger than the one Guhan first arrived 6 months ago, the actual battle was far less intense. Many of the famed swordsmen in Taiyin Star Garrison stayed in the Guardian's mansion because they obeyed Yao Guang's order. They only joined the battle after the 3 grand sorcerers were killed. Therefore, the rewards they received were far less than the ones they received 6 months ago. 6 months ago, every surviving famed swordsman received 500,000 yuan and 50,000 hero coins as a reward. This time, the average reward was only 100,000 yuan and 5,000 hero coins. On the other hand, the guest star garrison and the ancient sword rank swordsmen who directly joined the battle received more rewards. Of course, these famed swordsmen already knew what their rewards were, so they were not surprised at all. Almost all of their attention was on Guhan. They wanted to know how many rewards Guhan received to be able to take over the position of Taiyin Star Garrison. However, at this time, Yao Guang very cunningly kept them in suspense. He did not directly announce Guhan's reward. Instead, he clapped his hands and whispered something to the service staff in the meeting room. The service staff immediately opened a small door beside the meeting room. More than 10 humans entered through the small door in a single file. Upon closer inspection, these people were none other than the 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen under Guhan's Shising garrison. This meeting was a meeting for all famed swordsmen. In theory, ancient sword rank swordsmen were not qualified to enter the meeting room. However, today, Yao Guang had unexpectedly invited 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen to this meeting room. This made many of the famed swordsmen very confused. However, the famed sword rank swordbearers that belonged to the San Water Ape Guardian Palace were well aware of the reason for the appearance of these 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers. Brothers, you must be very curious as to why I brought these 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen to this meeting room today. Yao Guang could see the doubt in the eyes of the famed sword-grade swordbearers, so she chuckled and said, "I'll make a bet with you guys. Among all the famed sword-grade swordbearers here, other than brother Jiyu Han, I'm afraid that no one else will receive more rewards than these 18 ancient sword-grade swordbearers. How is that possible? That's impossible. How can my contribution be less than that of an ancient sword-rank swordsman? You must be joking." Yao Guang's words caused a huge uproar. Most of the famed swordsmen present did not believe that their contribution would be less than that of an ancient sword-rank swordsman. However, because of Yao Guang, no one dared to say this out loud. "You don't believe me? Don't worry, we'll pick one by one and ask." Yao Guang smiled and pointed at the ancient sword-rank swordsman at the front of the line. He smiled and asked, "Brother, do you know how much reward you deserve?" Hearing the mighty Lunar Star Guardian ask him a question, the ancient sword-rank swordsman was clearly a little agitated. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but he could not say a word. The audience, who had been waiting anxiously, was anxious. "Jiyu Chen, just tell the truth. There's nothing to be nervous about. I'm here." Jiyu Han's voice faintly transmitted from his position. Hearing Jiyu Han's voice, Jiyu Yue seemed as if he had eaten some kind of perfect supplement pill. In an instant, his entire aura became completely different, and his tone no longer hesitated. Turning to a clear and bright voice, he replied, replying to Lord's words, "This junior also does not know the exact reward, and can only make a rough estimate. I do not know if my estimate is accurate or not." "Oh. Then tell me, what's your estimate?" Yao Guang asked with a smile. "About, vaguely. I think it's about 1,000,000 RMB, or 100,000 hero coins." Jiyu Chen hesitated for a long time before finally saying his estimate. Jiyu Chen's words were like a bomb that exploded in the room. Everyone in the room wondered if they had heard wrong. This ancient sword-rank swordsman had actually said that he would receive 100,000 hero coins. What kind of joke was this? The average famed sword-rank swordsman only received 5,000 hero coins. Could it be that this ancient sword-rank swordsman's contribution was 20 times that of the famed sword-rank swordsman's? These famed sword-rank swordsmen wanted to capture these ancient sword-rank swordsmen and teach them a lesson. They wanted to teach them to be honest and not to lie so easily. Even if they were to lie, they had to make it sound as believable as possible. "Don't boast like that. TSK, this kid needs to have some confidence." Yao Guang chuckled and clapped his hands. An electronic voice rang throughout the room. Ancient sword rank swordsman Gu Yuchen has killed 500 junior witches, 112 intermediate witches, and 1 heaven witch in the battle 7 days ago. In total, he has received 2,420,000 renminbi, 242,000 hero coins, and 24,200 merit points. The number announced by the AI almost made the famed sword rank swordsmen fall off their seats in shock. Only now did they understand why Yao Guang had told Jiu Yuchen to be more confident. It turned out that Jiu Yuchen's own estimate was twice as low as the actual number. This meant that his reward was actually 40 times the average reward of these famed sword rank swordsmen. Even the most shameless person would want to crawl into a hole in the ground after hearing this difference. Right now, they could only hope that this Jiu Yuchen was an exception. The other 17 ancient sword rank swordsmen did not have such a terrifying battle record as Jiu Yuchen. However, reality once again slapped them in the face. When the AI announced the rewards for all the ancient sword rank swordsmen, everyone was shocked to find that although Jiu Yuchen was ranked near the top of the 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen, he did not have the most. The highest reward he had received was more than 280,000 hero coins. What was even more frightening was that the lowest reward among the 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen had received was 190,000 hero coins. Even so, they had completely crushed the famed sword rank swordsmen. Could these ancient sword rank swordsmen be spiritual sword rank swordsmen in disguise? These famed sword rank swordsmen had no idea how the ancient sword rank swordsmen had done this. They could only make the absurd assumption that they were spiritual sword rank swordsmen in disguise. Chapter 1014. Boss, did the AI make a mistake? These ancient sword rank swordbearers could barely kill a dozen minor sorcerers. How could they kill thousands of minor sorcerers? And 200 to 300 intermediate sorcerers? They even killed 2 heaven sorcerers? This is impossible. This is impossible. When the AI announced the results of these ancient sword rank swordbearers, one of the famed sword rank swordbearers finally could not take it anymore and stood up. This was also a signal. Following this famed sword rank swordbearers, more and more famed sword rank swordbearers stood up to support this famed sword rank swordbearers. They also did not believe that 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers could kill so many Wu people. This was like a joke. This time, the sorcerer tribe had sent out a total of 200,000 soldiers. If the total number of sorcerer tribe members killed by these ancient sword rank swordbearers was about 10,000, didn't this mean that these 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers had killed 5% of the sorcerer tribe's entire army? This meant that they had taken down more than half of the sorcerer tribe's army. These 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers had wiped out the entire house of guardians on the main star. Silence. Silence. Yao Guang slammed the table. You can doubt me, but you can never doubt the AI. When have you ever seen the AI lie? Yao Guang's loud question silenced the entire conference room. Yao Guang spoke the truth. In this world, the AI was the fairest. It recorded every battle result accurately and strictly. In the past few hundred years, the AI had made very few mistakes. How could it lie to them? Alright, I won't say any more. Take a look at this battle recording and you'll understand. Yao Guang waved his hand, and the projector projected a battle recording in the air. This was a recording of the swordbearers' battle. 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers had formed a tight formation and were rampaging through the witch tribe's army. They cut down melons and vegetables as if they were nothing. They were unstoppable. After the recording ended, all the famed sword-level swordbearers fell silent. The video lasted for around 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, all the famed sword rank swordbearers had witnessed how an army of around 500 sorcerer tribe soldiers had been completely annihilated by these 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers. What was even more terrifying was that not a single one of the 18 swordbearers had been injured. These ancient sword wielders are all sword masters. A famed sword rank swordsman covered his mouth in shock. At this time, most of the famed sword rank swordsmen realized that the ones fighting at the outermost edge of the formation were not the sword ladies, but the ancient sword rank swordsmen wielding their own sword ladies. Oh my god! Since when did sword masters become so worthless? There were 18 sword masters here. What the F***ck? One of the famed sword-wielding swordsmen did not even know what to say. He had never seen more than 18 sword masters in his life, and he had never thought that he would see 18 sword masters working together to fight. Yi Fan, what do you think of these ancient sword-rank swordsmen? Are they really sword masters? A swordsman nudged another swordsman next to him. As this person asked this question, everyone's eyes focused on this swordsman called Yi Fan. This was because Yi Fan was one of the few sword masters in the entire Shanhai Pass. Other than Yao Guang, Yi Fan was the only sword master in the Taiyin garrison. These famed sword-level swordsmen naturally did not dare to ask Yao Guang how he felt. They could only ask Yi Fan, who was next to them. Not bad. Their swordsmanship is probably better than mine, Yi Fan said after watching for a while. Sigh, brother Yi Fan, you are too humble. Hearing Yi Fan say this, the other famed sword-level swordsman began to praise Yi Fan for his humility. That's right. How could these ancient sword-level swordsmen compare to yours? Don't belittle yourself. Only Yi Fan knew that he was lying. His swordsmanship was only below average among the 18 ancient sword-level swordsmen. At least 10 of them had better swordsmanship than him. This discovery made Yi Fan feel extremely sad. His swordsmanship had gone down the drain. He could not even compare to an ancient sword-level swordsman. If Yi Fan knew that these ancient sword-level swordsmen had only practiced swordsmanship for less than 30 days, Yi Fan would probably be so angry that he would hang himself. At the same time, a few sharp-eyed famed sword-level swordsmen noticed that the 18 ancient sword-level swordsmen would occasionally return to the center of the formation to rest. When they returned, they would often receive a small bottle of potion from the sword lady who was in charge of commanding them. After drinking the potion, the ancient sword-level swordsmen, who had been extremely tired before, became lively again in just a minute or two. Their stamina quickly returned to their bodies. Clearly, these swordsmen relied on these potions to quickly recover their stamina. This was very tempting. All the ancient sword-level swordsmen knew that being able to quickly recover their stamina in battle was a huge advantage. Even if they were running away, they would be able to last longer. As a result, many of the famed sword-level swordsmen turned their attention to these potions. They planned to find these ancient sword-level swordsmen after the conference was over and think of a way to get a few of these precious potions from them. Now, does anyone have any objections? Do you think that the achievements of these 18 brothers are fake? Yao Guang asked everyone once again. However, it was different from the previous time when the crowd was agitated. This time, everyone was silent. If these ancient sword-level swordsmen really had the terrifying combat power shown in the recordings, then this kind of achievement could be explained. Alright, then I will now. Just as Yao Guang was about to give out the rewards to these ancient sword-level swordsmen, a famed sword-level swordsman suddenly stood up and cupped his fists at Yao Guang. Master Yao Guang, I have a presumptuous request. I hope Master Yao Guang can grant it. So it's brother Yi Fan. I wonder what brother Yi Fan wants. Yao Guang raised his head and saw that the person who had spoken was none other than the only sword master other than himself and Guhan, Yi Fan. Master Yao Guang, I would like to spar with these brothers and see if their sword skills are as good as those shown in the recordings. I hope Master will grant my request. Ever since he had seen the skills of these 18 ancient sword-level swordsmen, Yi Fan felt like he was on pins and needles. Yi Fan knew that his inner demons were stirred. He could not accept that his sword skills were inferior to these ancient sword-level swordsmen. If he did not spar with these ancient sword-level swordsmen, Yi Fan would not be able to calm down. This would be terrible for Yi Fan's future. Yi Fan, are you crazy? What do you think this is? How can you make such a ridiculous request? Sit back down, Yao Guang shouted. There was no way Yao Guang would allow this meeting to turn into a duel for no reason. Sigh. Since Comrade Yi Fan has made such a request, let's not reject him. Let's spar and see if my subordinates are worthy of their reputation. Guhan, who was sitting beside Yao Guang, suddenly spoke up. It was only then that the other sword-level sword-bearers realized that these 18 ancient sword-level sword-bearers were Guhan's subordinates. If these 18 ancient sword-level sword-bearers were really Guhan's subordinates, then as their master, Guhan, How terrifying would he be? Thinking of this, everyone could not help but feel a chill run down their spines. All right. Seeing that Guhan had agreed, Yaoguang did not object. After all, in less than 10 minutes, the master of Taiyin Star Garrison would no longer be Yaoguang, but Guhan. Guhan would be the future master of this place. Then let's go out and get ready. Just as Yaoguang was about to let everyone go out and fight, Guhan interrupted Yaoguang. Guhan shook his head and said, "Why go out and make it so troublesome? I think it's enough to compete in this conference room." "But brother Guhan, there is not enough space in the conference room for everyone to fight," Yaoguang said with a frown. "Who said there isn't? I think this big table is very suitable. It can be used as a stage," Guhan said as he looked at the conference table in front of him. This was a large oval conference table that was about 100 meters long and 10 meters wide. Putting aside the original purpose of the table, just based on its size alone, this table could indeed be used as a small martial arts arena. All right. Yaoguang could not be bothered to care so much. If Guhan wanted to cause trouble, then let him. After all, Guhan was very capable. As a result, a duel inexplicably unfolded on a conference table. Yi Fan was the first to step onto the conference table. Yi Fan's first opponent was an ancient sword wielder named He Jigang. This He Jigang was naturally Guhan's subordinate. He was already over 50 years old, and could be considered a middle-aged swordsman. However, this middle-aged swordsman was one of the best swordbearers out of the 18 swordbearers. Ji Yu Han could not help but sigh after examining the swordsmanship of the 18 swordbearers. If this He Jigang had started practicing swordsmanship from a young age, even if he could not reach the level of the mystic sword spirit, he could at least reach half the level of the mystic sword spirit. It was a pity that He Jigang was already old when he started practicing swordsmanship. It was a waste of good material. However, He Jigang was currently the best swordsman among the 18 swordsmen. Guhan had specifically chosen him to be Yi Fan's opponent. In Guhan's mind, He Jigang had about an 80% chance of beating Yi Fan. As for the remaining 20%, he was worried that He Jigang would be old and weak. If the fight became a long one, he might lose because of his stamina. Chapter 10-15. He Jigang was an ancient swordsman, while Yi Fan was a famed swordsman. Naturally, the two of them could not test each other's true strength. Therefore, Guhan and the two of them agreed that they were only allowed to use sword techniques and not sword essence. At the same time, they could only fight as ancient sword maidens. This way, the two of them would be on the same level. At the same time, whoever surrendered first or fell off the table first would lose the match. Very quickly, the two of them engaged in an intense battle. Sword light from both sides danced in the air, clashing against each other. All the sword bearers were dazzled by the battle and they began to praise the swordsmanship of the two sword masters. Their swordsmanship was truly brilliant. Of course, in Guhan's eyes, the two swordmasters' swordsmanship was laughably lame. If Guhan was He Jigang, just Yi Fan's first move alone would have been enough for Guhan to retaliate in 100 ways, and he would be able to push his opponent off the table in the first move. Of course, if Guhan was Yi Fan, the result would be the same. Either way, the two of them would not be a match for Guhan. Although in the eyes of Ji Yu Han, the two of them were so weak, but in the eyes of the two of them, it was an evenly matched battle, a fierce battle between dragons and tigers, a battle of equal strength. Yi Fan took advantage of his young age and good stamina to continuously attack He Jigang. As for He Jigang, because he was old, his stamina could not keep up with Yi Fan, so he could only defend passively. However, thanks to the toughness he had developed over the past 30 days, He Jigang's defense was watertight. After hundreds of moves, the two of them were still evenly matched. However, Yi Fan knew very well that he was gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. Because Yi Fan had been attacking fiercely, his stamina consumption was far greater than He Jigang's. By the time Yi Fan realized this, the difference in stamina between the two had been reversed. Instead, He Jigang, who was in his 50s, had much more stamina left than Yi Fan. In addition, He Jigang's swordsmanship was above Yi Fan's. So after a few hundred moves, The crowd could clearly see that Yi Fan was still at a disadvantage, and this disadvantage was getting bigger and bigger. Soon, he would lose. Even the crowd could see this, so how could Yi Fan, who was a master swordsman, not see this? So Yi Fan became more and more anxious. He could not accept that he had lost to an ancient swordsman. Not only did Yi Fan's anxiety not help him, but it also gave He Jigang a great opportunity. He Jigang aimed at Yi Fan's flaws and attacked several times. He successfully broke through Yi Fan's defense and left 3 to 4 deep wounds on Yi Fan's body. Yi Fan's blood and stamina were constantly flowing out. At the same time, according to the rules, if Yi Fan's body lost too much blood, the highest AI, which was monitoring the condition of both sides, had the right to declare Yi Fan's defeat. No. I can't lose to an ancient swordsman. Yi Fan's heart was burning, and because of the loss of blood, Yi Fan's consciousness was gradually blurring, and his rationality was weakening. As a result, the evil in Yi Fan's heart gradually gained the upper hand, causing his actions to break away from his rational control. He casually slashed out with a sword aura. He Jigang, who was ready to celebrate his victory, suddenly narrowed his eyes. He was horrified to find that Yi Fan had not followed the rules they had agreed on, and had waved his hand to attack with a fierce sword aura. The distance between He Jigang and Yi Fan was very close, and in addition to the fact that He Jigang was not a very powerful expert, and He Jigang was not prepared at all, this sudden sword aura instantly put He Jigang in an extremely dangerous state. He had no way of dodging this sword aura, and if this sword aura really hit his body, then even if He Jigang did not die, he would probably have to stay in the med bay for a day or two. Bang! At this critical moment, He Jigang only felt a gust of wind behind him, and another sword aura appeared out of nowhere. Just as Yi Fan's sword aura was about to cut He Jigang, it collided with the sword aura. After the collision, the power of the two sword auras cancelled each other out, and finally disappeared without a trace. He Jigang also narrowly avoided the disaster. On the other side, Guhan gently put down his right hand and retracted his index finger. Clearly, this sword aura was used by Guhan at a critical moment. Only Guhan could let his sword aura reach He Jigang first, and help him block this fatal attack. Yi Fan, what are you doing? Do you not even want your face anymore? Yao Guang stood up and roared angrily. Not only did this Yi Fan violate the rules of the duel, he even wanted to harm his comrade's life. This was absolutely intolerable, and he must be punished severely. I can't lose. I won't lose. However, Yi Fan did not care about Yao Guang's words. On the contrary, he became even more deranged, and waved the sword lady in his hand in a frenzy. One after another, sword auras flew towards He Jigang. If all the sword auras hit him, He Jigang would not even need to enter the medical bay. He could just wait for death. Oh no. Yi Fan has already gone mad. Guhan had very sharp eyes. He could tell at a glance that Yi Fan had entered a state of madness due to the deep obsession in his heart. At this time, Yi Fan could not be persuaded with just a few words. He had to beat him into submission. I'll suppress him. Yao Guang immediately said. The only people who could suppress Yi Fan were him and Guhan. Just now, Guhan had already saved He Jigang. How could he let Guhan do it again? No need. I have a good idea. Guhan smiled and shook his head. He then said to the remaining 17 subordinates who were watching the duel foolishly, "What are you guys still standing there for? Hurry up and help your comrade take down this crazy guy." Yes. When the 17 people heard Guhan's order, they immediately jumped onto the meeting table without hesitation. They quickly formed the Tai Chi Yin-Yang formation with He Jigang, and surrounded He Jigang with the strength of 18 people. The Tai Chi Yin-Yang formation was not ordinary. It could be divided into two modes, external and internal. External, the 18 people's strength would be spread out to deal with thousands of enemies. Internal, the 18 people's strength could be concentrated to attack a single person at the same time. Although the sword chi that Yi Fan continuously shot out was very powerful, it was not something that an ordinary ancient sword wielder could defend against. But with the combined strength of 18 ancient sword wielder, it did not pose much of a threat. However, Yi Fan's continuous shooting of sword chi had greatly depleted the sword chi in his body. After a few minutes, The frequency of the sword chi was no longer as high as before. Don't waste any more time. Start attacking. Gu Han, who was outside the formation, said calmly. His 18 subordinates looked at each other and simultaneously stabbed their sword mothers at 18 vital points on Yi Fan's body. Yi Fan did not know what to do. He could defend the top 3, but he could not defend the bottom 3, and he could defend the bottom 3, but he could not defend the right 3. Very quickly, Yi Fan's vitals were blocked by 18 sword maidens at the same time. At the same time, they knocked the sword maidens out of his hands. If he dared to struggle, the sword maidens would directly pierce his body. Even though Yi Fan's cultivation had gone berserk, he vaguely understood that if he moved recklessly, only death awaited him. I've lost. Yi Fan gritted his teeth as he said this. His blood-red eyes instantly withered, and then his eyeballs rolled back into his head as he fainted. Take him away. I'll deal with him later. Yao Guang cursed angrily. He immediately had the attendants help the fainted Yi Fan into a room to rest. The entire meeting room was once again quiet. However, the conference table that was used as the arena was riddled with holes and was on the verge of collapse. The table was covered with various sword marks left by the rampaging sword chi. Rather than calling it a conference table, it would be more appropriate to call it an ingenious tree carving. Everyone looked helplessly at the conference table that was too horrible to look at. They did not know how to proceed with the meeting. Boss Yao Guang, I don't think this table can be used anymore. Why don't we end the meeting here for today? We can continue the meeting after we get a new table, a sword-bearer sitting near Yao Guang suggested. The other sword-bearers nodded in agreement. Even Yao Guang appeared to be very moved. Indeed, the meeting could not continue in this state. They were not interested in attending Gu Han's succession ceremony anyway. Here it comes. Gu Han's heart lit up. He immediately stared at the sword-bearer who made the suggestion. Gu Han's eyes were so sharp that the sword-bearer could not help but lower his head to avoid Gu Han's gaze. So why was Gu Han staring at this sword-bearer? The reason was very simple. Just now, Gu Han had deliberately let the battle unfold on the conference table in order to use this situation to lure the human traitor out. Gu Han already knew that the traitor's goal was to delay Gu Han's succession as the guardian of the lunar star. Therefore, Gu Han thought that instead of waiting for the traitor to make a move, it would be better to create an opportunity for the traitor to make a move himself. Therefore, Gu Han deliberately let the battle unfold on the conference table. When Yi Fan's chi deviation happened, he also deliberately did not let Yao Guang directly suppress it. Instead, he let the 18 ancient sword-rank swordbearers fight it out. His goal was to damage the conference table as much as possible, so that the traitor would suggest delaying the succession ceremony because of the damage to the conference table. So, this sword-bearer in front of him who suggested that the meeting be suspended was a human traitor? Gu Han stared at this sword-bearer and thought to himself. Chapter 1016. What's your name? Gu Han raised his head and looked at the swordsman who was the first to ask for a temporary adjournment. I'm Zhu Zijian. I don't know why Master Gu Han called for me. Zhu Zijian was shocked by Gu Han's gaze. He even stuttered when he spoke, as if he was afraid that Gu Han would jump up and eat him. Nothing much, I was just asking. Ji Yuhan snickered and didn't say anything else. This Zhu Zijian only asked to postpone the ceremony. In fact, there was no hint of a traitor. Gu Han could not do anything to this Zhu Zijian at this time. He would wait and see. You said you wanted to postpone this meeting. Why is that? Gu Han asked again. Of course it's because this conference table has been ruined by the battle just now. It's not suitable for the meeting to continue. It's more suitable to start after a new conference table is replaced. This Zhu Zijian stuttered. For some reason, talking to Gu Han always made Zhu Zijian feel like he had lost all his confidence. What a joke. Is there any rule in this world that states that a conference table must be used for a meeting? Gu Han looked at this guy with disdain. Could it be that the ancestors of the modern age, the Middle Age, and the Ancient Age all used such a huge conference table when they held a meeting? The others were speechless by Gu Han's question. A meeting needed a mouth and a brain. The biggest use of a conference table was to put tea. To be honest, a meeting had nothing to do with a conference table. It could still be held without a conference table. But this conference table that's riddled with holes is really an eyesore here. Why don't we just remove this conference table? As Ji Han spoke, the bureau chief slammed the conference table hard. The 100-meter-long conference table, which was riddled with holes but still remained intact, actually turned into a sand sculpture under the force of Ji Han's slap. It fell to the ground and became a pile of wood powder. The entire conference table instantly disappeared without a trace. Okay, now that this conference table is gone, doesn't the relationship between everyone become closer? This slap from Guhan shocked all the swordsmen present. Although they also had the ability to slap things into dust, they could at most slap a fist-sized piece of wood into dust. Wanting them to slap a 100-meter-long and 10-meter-wide conference table into dust with one slap. Not to mention that they couldn't do it, they didn't even dare to think about it. This slap from Guhan was too terrifying. Is this guy really human? I'm afraid even if Kunzu and Zhe were alive, they wouldn't be able to do this. All the famed sword-level sword-bearers instantly fell silent. Not a single one of them, including Zhu Zijian, dared to say anything. They could only watch Ji Han continue his performance. It seems that no one has any objections. Brother Yaoguang, I think we can continue with the meeting. After all, it's not easy for everyone to gather together. With so many famous swordsmen gathered here, Wu people might find a loophole. Therefore, it's better to carry on with this meeting and solve all the problems at once. It's too troublesome to run around. Ji Han said with a smile. Comrades, don't you think so? Guhan's gaze swept across the other famous swordsmen. Afraid of Guhan's power, these swordsmen didn't dare to say anything else. Previously, they had opposed Guhan not only because they didn't like Guhan's qualifications, but also because they felt that Guhan wasn't strong enough to become the Moon Guard. However, after seeing the strength of the 18 ancient sword wielders under Ji Han, as well as the fact that Ji Han had shown that he was able to completely disregard 1502, as well as the fact that he had just shattered the entire conference table with a single palm strike, it was clear that no one could match his strength. The biggest reason to oppose Ji Han no longer existed. Forget it. This Guhan had Yaoguang's support, and he had unparalleled abilities. It seemed that the position of Moon Guard was already his. So what was there to oppose? Did they really have to wait a few days to see Guhan strut around in front of them? They might as well settle everything today and hide far away from this Guhan, pretending that he didn't exist. Thinking of this, all the famous swordsmen no longer objected. They all expressed that defending against Wu people was more important. It was better to end the meeting as soon as possible. If that's the case, let's continue the meeting. Yaoguang smiled bitterly. Clearly, Yaoguang didn't want to see the meeting turn out like this. At the same time, Yaoguang was very curious. Why did Guhan, who was usually very calm, seem so strong today? It was as if he had to get the position under Yaoguang's butt. This was not the Guhan he knew. Although he couldn't understand this, Yaoguang could only continue the meeting. Then, Yaoguang cleared his throat and said, "These 18 ancient sword rank comrades have made great contributions. Even I, Yaoguang, feel that I am inferior to them. Invite these 18 ancient sword rank comrades to come to my side. I would like to propose a toast to these 18 comrades." As soon as Yaoguang finished speaking, a long line of maids entered the room, carrying cups filled with wine. When Jiu Chen and the other 18 saw Guhan nod, they happily walked in front of Yaoguang and took the cups from the maids. Because the meeting table had been destroyed, a large space had been vacated. These 18 people could comfortably stand in front of Yaoguang, and it didn't feel crowded at all. Everyone drank the wine in their cups, and then Yaoguang introduced the 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers to them. After that, they followed the maids out of the room. After all, this was a meeting for the famed sword rank swordbearers. Before they became famed sword rank swordbearers, they did not have the right to be here. I believe that everyone has realized that there is still one brother who has not received his reward. That is Comrade Guhan, who is sitting next to me. It's not that I, Yaoguang, am stingy. The reason why I left Comrade Guhan's reward until the end is because Comrade Guhan's reward is too important. It needs to be presented at the end. Now, let's announce Comrade Guhan's reward. Yes. The electronic voice of the highest AI sounded in the meeting room again. Famed sword rank swordbearer Guhan has killed 271 junior sorcerers, 563 intermediate sorcerers, 89 heaven sorcerers, and 3 grand sorcerers in battle 7 days ago. He has received a total of 91,480,100 renminbi, 914,8010 hero coins, and 914,801 merit point. You didn't have to describe how shocked all the famed sword rank swordbearers were. Their minds had almost gone blank. Only now did they understand why Yaoguang would give the position of Guardian of the Lunar Star to Guhan. Yaoguang had not officially admitted that the 4 grand sorcerers had been killed by Yaoguang himself. It seemed that 3 of the 4 grand sorcerers had been killed by Guhan. For every grand sorcerer killed by the Wu people, he would receive 30 million renminbi, 3 million hero coins, and 300,000 merit points. In history, as long as one could kill 2 Wu people's grand sorcerers, the merit points would be more than enough to exchange for the position of Guardian of the Lunar Star. Everyone had nothing to say about the fact that a famed sword rank swordbearer, who could kill a grand sorcerer with his own hands, had taken over the position of Guardian of the Lunar Star. Therefore, at this moment, after the highest AI announced Guhan's contribution, all the famed sword rank swordbearers were completely convinced. They also started to sincerely acknowledge Guhan as their leader. Everything seemed to be back on the right track. Guhan was also very satisfied with the reward he had received. He didn't care about the RMB, but the 9 million hero coins had helped Guhan a lot. At least, the 9 million hero coins were enough for Guhan to synchronize all of his sword ladies to the first level. Tonight, Guhan's sword ladies would have to suffer again. After the distribution of Guhan's reward, the meeting finally entered the most important part. I believe that all of you have heard the news that I, Yaoguang, will be passing my position to one of you today. At this point, Yaoguang exclaimed, I, Yaoguang, have been in Shanhaiguan for 2 years and 9 months. In another 3 months, I'll be returning to the base city. Logically speaking, I, Yaoguang, should be happy to be returning to the safer base city. However, in reality, I'm very sad and in pain because I couldn't find anyone to entrust the Taiyin Star garrison to before I left. The position of Guardian of the Lunar Star is too important. Not only does it concern the safety of everyone here, but it also concerns the safety of the entire human race. Therefore, the position of Guardian of the Lunar Star must be shouldered by someone with sufficient strength. Since the previous Guardian passed the position to me, Yaoguang, I have to pass this responsibility to a true powerhouse so that he can protect everyone's safety. At first, I thought I wouldn't be able to find such a powerhouse before I left. I didn't expect God to send this powerhouse to me. His brother Guhan, who's sitting next to me, Yaoguang pulled Guhan to his feet excitedly. The two of them held hands and looked very intimate. Initially, I was very troubled about how to prove brother Guhan's strength to everyone. However, after the accident just now, there's no need for that. I believe that everyone has completely understood brother Guhan's strength. Brother Guhan has only been in Shanhai Pass for 6 months. He'll be guarding Shanhai Pass for 2.5 years. I believe that during these 2.5 years, the Guardian of the Lunar Star and even the entire Ju-Tien Star battle formation will be impregnable. Even if there are twice as many Wu people, they won't be able to break through the place protected by brother Guhan. Alright, there's no time to lose. I'll pull down my Taiyin Star Ju-Tien Star's star banner now. Then, Yaoguang, who was talking excitedly, suddenly let out a heart-wrenching scream, which shocked everyone. They saw Yaoguang clutching his chest tightly. He pointed at the wine glass at the side and said intermittently in pain, "Poison, poison." After saying that, Yaoguang fainted and completely lost his consciousness. Chapter 10:17. No one had expected such an unexpected situation to happen at the last and most critical moment. The dignified Guardian of the Lunar Star was poisoned at the critical moment when he was about to pass on his position, and he passed out with no one knowing if he was dead or alive. Fortunately, modern medicine was sufficiently developed, and there was also the existence of something as abnormal as a medical pod. Therefore, Yao Guang was sent into the medical pod immediately. According to the medical pod, it was an extremely troublesome virus. Even with the power of the medical pod, it would take more than 5 days to neutralize all the toxins. However, this outcome made everyone heave a sigh of relief. It did not matter whether it was 5 days or 50 days, as long as Yao Guang's life was not threatened, it was enough. As for the problem of Yao Guang's lack of combat power, the swordbearers were not so concerned. Anyway, now that there was Guhan, who was much more abnormal than Yao Guang, as long as Guhan was around, not only could they make up for the lost Yao Guang's combat power, but they would also have more than before. Hence, Yao Guang did not seem so important anymore. Strange. Why would someone poison Lord Yao Guang? He has already decided to step down and will leave Shanghai Pass in 3 months. If the spy wanted to poison someone, he should have poisoned Guhan. Why would he do it to Lord Yao Guang? This is really strange. After calming down, all the famous swordbearers present could not help but have such a question in their hearts. Yes, Yao Guang was about to leave Shanghai Pass, and his threat to the Wu people was about to be reduced to a minimum. There was no need for the Wu people to take such a huge risk to poison Yao Guang. On the contrary, poisoning Guhan was what they should do. However, in the end, the one who was poisoned was Yao Guang, which puzzled them. However, this question was not difficult to answer in Guhan's eyes. The reason why the Wu people poisoned Yao Guang was very simple. It was to delay the time for him to take over as the guardian of the lunar star. Now that Yao Guang had entered the medical pod for treatment as they wished, Guhan could not drag Yao Guang out of the medical pod. Even if Guhan really did that, he could not wake the unconscious Yao Guang. If Yao Guang had not taken the initiative to pull out the lunar star's great Ju-Tian star Arbana, then Guhan would not have been able to inherit the position of the lunar star's guardian at all. Unless Guhan killed Yao Guang now and destroyed the old lunar star's great Ju-Tian star Arbana, only then would Guhan be able to inherit the new lunar star's great Ju-Tian star Arbana and become the new guardian of the lunar star. Unfortunately, no matter how much Guhan calculated, he still missed one move. He did not think that the Wu people would choose to directly poison Yao Guang. Because of Yao Guang's poisoning, the Wu people finally achieved their goal. They successfully delayed for 5 days, which was enough for the remaining 9 great sorcerers to be resurrected. I have investigated the origin of this batch of wine. This wine was stored in the warehouse of the Taiyin Star Garrison about 30 years ago. It has always been stored in a relatively hidden place in the Taiyin Garrison until today. When Yao Guang specifically asked me to look for some old wine, it was dug out from the depths of the warehouse. Because the entire warehouse has a complete surveillance system, I have even checked all the videos frame by frame. Therefore, I can guarantee you that this bottle of wine has not been opened before it left the warehouse, Tomono Kakaze said very seriously. Then what about on the way? On the way from the warehouse to the conference room, could someone have poisoned the wine? Guhan asked after thinking for a while. On the way from the warehouse to the conference room, only the maid who was in charge of collecting the wine had the chance to poison the wine. From the time the maid touched the wine to the time she handed it to Yao Guang, a total of 21 minutes and 32 seconds had passed. During these 21 minutes and 32 seconds, 19 minutes and 16 seconds were under surveillance, and the rest of the time was in the blind spot of the surveillance. Therefore, I can't guarantee that the maid did not poison the wine, Tomono Kakaze answered. But the maid is already dead. Guhan smiled bitterly. As soon as Yao Guang was poisoned, Guhan sent people to arrest all the maids, trying to find the culprit. However, when the famous sword-bearers found the maids, one of the maids who poured the wine for Yao Guang had already died from the poison. The clues had been cut off, but it was almost certain that the maid was the one who poisoned the wine, and the maid had obviously been killed by the spy. What about that Zhu Zijian? He is a serious suspect. I want you to look through his background immediately, as well as all the information since he entered Shanghai Pass. See if there are any important clues. Guhan quickly told her about Zhu Zijian, who was a serious suspect. All right. Tomono Kakaze accepted the order and left. As Guhan had asked for all the information related to Zhu Zijian, the amount of information was quite large. If they were to use manual methods to look through all the information, it would probably take at least 2 to 3 days to look through all the information. However, because Tomono Kakaze was the highest level of artificial intelligence, her speed of looking through the information was quite fast. In less than 10 minutes, Tomono Kakaze brought back the results of her work. Guhan, I've looked through all the videos about Zhu Zijian more than 10 times. I've looked through almost all the videos since Zhu Zijian entered Shanghai Pass for a year and a half. I can guarantee you that at least within the range of the videos, there is nothing strange about Zhu Zijian at all. He did not reveal any flaws. What about him and the maid? Did they have any contact? Guhan asked again. Absolutely not. All the maids are not allowed to leave the Taiyin Star Garrison, and the number of times Zhu Zijian has entered the Taiyin Star Garrison can be counted on one hand. Since there are many surveillance cameras in the public areas of the Taiyin Star Garrison, almost all of Zhu Zijian's actions are under surveillance. He always leaves after a meeting, and he has never stayed in the Taiyin Star Garrison for more than a minute. It's impossible for him to have any contact with the maid, Tomono Kakaze answered solemnly. In other words, this Zhu Zijian has the perfect evidence to prove his innocence. Guhan's expression was solemn. But do you think that's possible? My main suspect is perfect to the point where he doesn't reveal any flaws. Isn't this the biggest flaw? Are you saying that this Zhu Zijian is in disguise? He purposely put on such a perfect performance. Tomono Kakaze asked. Jina-chan, let me ask you. Can you monitor the situation in Zhu Zijian's house? Guhan asked again. I'm afraid that won't work. According to the law, every sword wielder's home is a place of absolute privacy. No public surveillance equipment is allowed to enter the sword wielder's home. Therefore, other than the public areas in Zhu Zijian's guardian mansion, there are no surveillance equipment anywhere else. I can't monitor Zhu Zijian's situation in his own home, Tomono Kakaze immediately replied. That's right. The Wu people have one more grand wizard who can open the void door. Although the guardian mansion has a shielding device that can block the void energy, as long as Zhu Zijian can remove the shielding device in his house and open the void door, Zhu Zijian will be able to contact the Wu people through the void door. Moreover, among the 12 grand wizards of the Wu people, Hu Yi has a special ability. He can place his target between the void and reality. The recording and surveillance equipment won't be able to see the existence of the spell. Since he is in between the void and reality, the shielding device that guards against the void door won't work. At the same time, since Zhu Zijian is a human, the shielding device against the Wu people won't work. After the two are combined, the defense measures that the humans use to prevent the Wu people from sneaking into the central area will be rendered useless. Zhu Zijian can use this to hide from all the surveillance equipment and secretly contact the maidservants, passing on their plan to the maidservants, Guhan said gloomily. Then everything makes sense. It seems like the spy is Zhu Zijian. Tomono Kakaze was a little emotional. Anyway, Guhan has temporarily taken over the position of the Lunar Star Guardian. You can order Zhu Zijian to be arrested now. We have ways to make him tell the truth. No, there's no hurry to arrest him. Guhan shook his head. His goal has been achieved. Arresting him now won't help. Besides, I don't think you'll be able to get the truth out of him. It's better to keep him and monitor him strictly. In 3 days, all the Grand Wizards will be resurrected, but we don't know what the Grand Wizard's goal is. Keeping this traitor might be useful when the time comes. A spy has always been a double-edged sword. When he's not exposed, he's our deadliest threat. Once he's exposed, he'll be our best dagger to attack the enemy. Hearing Guhan's words, Tomono Kakaze was silent for a while. Then, she said with some fear, "You humans are really scary. You can actually calculate so many things. There's nothing we can do. This is the way we humans survive, and it's also the way we humans die." Guhan sighed. No matter what, the Wu people will definitely launch another attack on humans in 3 days. Immediately pass my order to all the sword bearers at the famed sword level. Order them to rest and build up their strength in the next 3 days. At the same time, Be on guard around them. All the food and drinks must be strictly tested. Make sure that no more people are killed because of poisoning. It's best for them to only use the food stored in their dimensional pockets. They're not allowed to eat the food prepared by the Guardian Mansion. I'm afraid that the food might also be poisoned. Then, Guhan listed dozens of different precautions. He defended almost all the areas where the Wu people could launch a sneak attack. Then, he asked Tomono Kakaze to organize the precautions into detailed rules and distribute them to all the sword-bearers through her personal terminal. Then, he sent a request for help to the Shanghai Pass Management Committee, hoping that they could replenish all the sword-bearers that were lost in the previous battle within 3 days. They also wanted to prepare at least a few thousand sword-bearers. These sword-bearers would not fuse with the Ju Tian Stars our streamers for the time being. When the sword-bearers were killed in the battle, they would be ordered to fuse with the Ju Tian Stars our streamers. This way, they could quickly fill up the gaps in the defense and maintain the battle line at full strength. Unfortunately, this request was completely ignored by the Shanghai Pass Management Committee. It was not that the Shanghai Pass Management Committee did not take Guhan's request seriously. It was because they had carried out 3 rounds of conscription within the short span of 6 months. The number of sword-bearers that could be conscripted had been greatly reduced. If another few thousand people were sent to Shanghai Pass, they might not even be able to guarantee the daily defense of the base cities. For the sake of their own safety, the base cities could not send sword-bearers into the bottomless pit that was Shanghai Pass anymore. In conclusion, Guhan had done everything he could. 3 days later, Guhan would have to face the greatest test in the history of Shanghai Pass. Chapter 1018. In these 3 days, Guhan did not just wait for the Wu people to attack him. On the contrary, Guhan made a surprising decision. He selected 360 of the most talented ancient sword-bearers and sent them to the Shixing garrison for 3 days of special training. The Black Tortoise Imperial Star Garrison had 7 main star areas, the Baihu Imperial Star Garrison had 7 main star areas, and the Sky City Imperial Star Garrison had 3 main star areas. Out of the 6 main star areas in the Ziwei Imperial Star Garrison, 3 belonged to the Taiyin Star Garrison. This way, each main star area could be allocated 18 ancient sword-bearers to form the Tai Chi Yin-Yang formation. It was a powerful addition to the other star areas. Although the guardians of each planet did not care about this, and they had already seen how powerful the Tai Chi Yin-Yang formation formed by the 18 ancient sword-rank sword-bearers that Ji Yuhan had trained, the problem was that Ji Yuhan's 18 ancient sword-rank sword-bearers had trained for a full 6 months. They did not know that Ji Yuhan had not started training these ancient sword-rank sword-bearers for the first 3 months. According to Ji Yuhan's words, the shamans would launch another attack in 3 to 5 days. What kind of effect could they have in a short 3 to 5 days? However, it was not a big deal to send 18 ancient sword-grade sword-bearers to train with him. There was no need for them to go against him, even though he had not officially taken over the position of Guardian of the Lunar Star, but he had already begun to exercise his authority as the Guardian of the Lunar Star. Therefore, they sent their respective ancient sword-grade sword-bearers to Ji Yuhan. Then, these 360 ancient sword-grade sword-bearers spent the most terrifying and unforgettable 3 days of their lives. By the time people started to get interested in what happened in these 3 days, there were less than 100 of these 360 ancient sword-bearers still alive. However, these 100 people were very tight-lipped about what happened in these 3 days. No matter how many people asked, they were not willing to tell others what happened in these 3 days. Only one ancient sword-bearer said to his descendants before he died, "It was hell. The hell of hell." In any case, when the 3 days were over, the ancient sword-bearers returned to their respective home planets as if they had been reborn. Ordinary people could feel the murderous aura emanating from them even from a dozen meters away. What happened later proved that although the 18 ancient sword-bearers were not as strong as the original 18 ancient sword-bearers in the Sha*T Planet Guardian Mansion, they were still far stronger than the 18 ordinary ancient sword-bearers. Their combat power was equivalent to the combat power of 3 famed sword-bearers. In the battles that followed, they accumulated a lot of battle achievements, and they became the treasures of each home planet's guardians. They were the strongest trump cards. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. That morning, Guhan issued a strict order to all the famed sword-bearers, ordering them to be on guard in their respective areas. The Wu people could attack at any time. He also specifically asked Tomono Kakaze to pay attention to Ju Zijian's movements. Most of the famed sword-bearers were disdainful of Guhan's order. This was because they felt that the Wu people would not attack again at this time. In the battle 9 days ago, the Wu people had lost a lot of their forces. More importantly, 9 grand wizards had died at the hands of Guhan and Liunian Ling. The Wu people's high-end forces had been severely damaged. Before the Grand Wizard was resurrected, the Wu people would definitely not attack the humans again. Even if the resurrection time of the Wu people's Grand Wizard had been accelerated for some special reason, it was impossible for it to be accelerated to the point of being resurrected in a short 9 days. Therefore, all the famed sword-bearers secretly thought that this temporary Sun-Moon-Star Guardian must be out of his mind. Otherwise, he would not have given such a ridiculous order. However, since the order had been given, it was not good for them to disobey it. They only planned to fool around for a while and get over it. However, when the sun rose to the highest point in the sky, a sky full of dust appeared at the border of the Guardian's mansion. This cloud of dust was so huge that it had the effect of covering the entire sky. The visibility was reduced to the worst possible situation. This is the Samadhi storm. This is the Samadhi storm. The guardian of the virtual Sun Rat Guard mansion exclaimed in shock when he saw this. The divine Samadhi Tempest was the great wizard Feng Bo's ultimate skill. Because the divine Samadhi Tempest required a huge amount of energy to perform, and its attack power was not strong, its power lay in its ability to block the sight of humans and all sorts of electronic signals. Therefore, the great wizard Feng Bo rarely used this skill. He would only use it when a great battle broke out to cut off the electronic signals between the various guardian manas. The appearance of the Samadhi storm also meant that the Wu people had once again launched an attack on the humans. Oh my god! Isn't Fengbo already dead? Why is the Samadhi storm still here? The sword-bearers who discovered the Samadhi storm were about to cry. Could it be that they had received false information? That Fengbo was actually not dead? Quick! Send a message to the Taiyin Star immediately. Tell them that Fengbo is not dead. I'm afraid the Wu people are going to launch an attack on one of the Guardian's mansions. The sword-bearers of the virtual Sun Rat Guard mansion immediately wanted to report this situation to the Taiyin Star garrison. Although the Samadhi storm had the magical effect of blocking human communication, it was undoubtedly a fantasy for Fengbo to use this storm to cover the entire defense line. Even if he blocked the communication of the Guardian's mansion on the main planet, the storm would only last for about 10 minutes at most. Now, it seemed that the Samadhi storm had blocked the entire area of the Imperial Star garrison. This meant that the Samadhi storm could only last for a minute at most. If it covered the entire defense line, it would only last for 5 or 6 seconds at most. In a full-scale attack, the Samadhi storm would not have much effect. Therefore, Grand Wizard Fengbo rarely used the Samadhi storm, which would consume a lot of energy. However, in a surprise attack on a certain area, the Samadhi storm was often used. As long as the communication of the main planet garrison was blocked for 10 minutes, the main planet garrison would probably fall under the attack of the Wu people with all their strength. Then, the Wu people would be able to successfully open a gap in the human defense line and tear the entire defense line apart. This was one of the tactics that the Wu people had used hundreds of times. Now that the Wu people had suddenly used the Samadhi storm, it was obvious that the Wu people wanted to launch a surprise attack. The virtual Sun Rat Guard mansion that was blocked by the Samadhi storm was also the target of the Wu people's surprise attack. Thinking of the tragic outcome of the Wu people's surprise attack on the Guardian mansion in all the battles since ancient times, the Sun Rat Guard of Emptiness immediately dialed his personal terminal desperately, trying to get in touch with the Taiyin Star garrison and get support from the Taiyin Star garrison. However, under the blockade of the Samadhi storm, the communication distance of this person's terminal had been reduced from dozens of kilometers to only a few hundred meters. He could not get in touch with the outside world at all. Only some sword-bearers in the virtual Sun Rat Guard mansion could barely get in touch with him through his personal terminal because they were close enough. All sword-bearers, immediately abandon your guardian mansion and move towards the virtual Sun Rat Guard mansion at full speed. Everyone, focus on defense. Don't get separated. At this critical moment, the Sun Rat Guard of Emptiness could only choose a less terrible answer from all the worst ones, which was to let all the sword-bearers stick together and defend. Although they would most likely be wiped out if they stuck together, there was still a small chance that they could survive. This was the last resort. Based on past experience, the Sun Rat Guard of Emptiness thought that at least half of the sword-bearers would die under the attacks of the Wu people. However, to his surprise, when all the sword-bearers gathered at the virtual Sun Rat Guard mansion, the Sun Rat Guard of Emptiness counted the number of people and was shocked to find that 98% of the sword-bearers had successfully arrived at the virtual Sun Rat Guard mansion. Only 7 or 8 ancient sword-bearers were missing. However, according to the description of their companions, they should have gone missing after losing their way in the Samadhi storm. They did not die in the hands of the Wu people. This discovery shocked the Sun Rat Guard of Emptiness. This situation was not right. According to past experience, there should be a large number of Wu people attacking the virtual Sun Rat Guard mansion endlessly. Why didn't all the sword-bearers encounter 1 or 2 Wu people on their way back? Sir, I have a discovery, but I don't know if I should say it. Just as the Sun Rat Guard of Emptiness was confused, one of the ancient sword-bearers suddenly said, "What did you discover?" "Tell me," the Sun Rat Guard of Emptiness said hurriedly. "When I was retreating, I saw a dozen sorcerers flying through the sky at an extremely fast speed. At that time, I thought that I would definitely die at the hands of these sorcerers. However, these sorcerers did not seem to care about a sword wielder like me. Instead, they flew straight into the depths of the defensive line. I was lucky enough to escape, but I don't understand why they would let me go," the ancient sword wielder said. "A dozen Wu people flew past our virtual Sun Rat Guard mansion at high speed," the Sun Rat Guard of Emptiness mumbled to himself. "The only Wu people who can fly in the sky are heaven witches and great witches. If it was just to cover a dozen heaven witches entering the defense line, there would be no need for Great Witch Fengbue to expend his own origin to use the Samadhi Divine Storm. It was clearly not a dozen heaven witches who flew past us. But if these dozen Wu people are not heaven witches, doesn't that mean these dozen Wu people are all?" Thinking up to this point, the Sun Rat of Emptiness suddenly panicked. It grabbed the ancient sword rank swordsman's collar and asked, "Quick, tell me, which direction did those flying sorcerer tribe members go?" I think. Yes, I think they're flying in the direction of the Taiyin Star Garrison," the ancient sword-bearer replied after a long pause. "Oh my god. Is their target Boss Yaoguang?" The Sun Rat Guard of Emptiness's legs turned to jelly, and he almost knelt on the ground. Chapter 1019. Ha ha ha. That Ying Zheng is really cunning. I can't believe he actually came up with such a way to delay us for 3 days. Now, even if a sword immortal were to descend, he would not be able to stop us. We, the Wu people, can finally break out of this cage that has lasted for over 100 years. All the maidservants and staff in the Taiyin garrison suddenly heard a terrifying voice. When they raised their heads timidly and looked in the direction of the voice, they saw a terrifying creature with 9 bird heads screaming in the air. Juying. It's the Grand Shaman's Juying. Although these maidservants and staff were all ordinary humans, they had worked in the Taiyin Star Garrison for a long time, so naturally, they had memorized the images of the 12 Grand Shamans. With just one glance, they could tell that this 9-headed monster in front of them was the Grand Shaman Juying, the cruelest of the 12 Grand Shamans. Legend had it that the 9 heads of the Grand Shaman Juying would eat the hearts and livers of 9 living humans every day. It was the cruelest and most terrifying Grand Shaman among all the Grand Shamans. At the thought of this, these humans were even more frightened. As mentioned before, in the entire Shanhai Pass, only the Sunstar Garrison and the Taiyin Star Garrison had ordinary humans. In the rest of the garrison mansions, apart from the sword-bearers, there were only simulated robots. The reason for this was that in the entire Shanhai Pass, only the Taiyin Star Garrison and the Sunstar Garrison were absolutely safe. For over 100 years, there had never been a case where a Grand Shaman could destroy the Taiyin Star Garrison and the Taiyin Star Garrison. This was because once either of the two garrison mansions was destroyed, it would mean the complete collapse of the Ju Tian Star battle formation. Then, the Shanhai Pass would naturally be destroyed, and there would be no need for it to exist anymore. As the saying went, as long as the Ju Tian Star battle formation existed, the Taiyin garrison would never be destroyed. As long as the Ju Tian Star battle formation existed, the Taiyin garrison would never be destroyed. But now, the Grand Shaman Juying had appeared in front of the Taiyin garrison. Could it be that today was the day that the Taiyin garrison would be destroyed? The maidservants and staff were extremely anxious. If the Sunstar garrison was here, the Taiyin garrison would still have their backbone. But now, Yaoguang was still lying in the medical pod. The Taiyin garrison had lost their backbone, and they only had these powerless ordinary people. Don't worry, the Taiyin garrison has its own dimensional defense system. As long as the dimensional defense system is the Grand Realm, and the Spirit, the Realm, and the Realm with the Realm, and the Star, and the Realm with the Sheng. As long as the Realm can last for an hour, we will be able to get support from the other swordbearers. These Grand Shamans will die here, and the new Sunstar garrison will definitely kill these Grand Shamans. The maidservant's words instantly helped the other humans regain some strength. That's right, the Taiyin garrison had the unique dimensional defense system in the entire Shanhai Pass. As the two most important guard mansions in the entire Shanhai Pass, the humans had put in a lot of effort to protect the Taiyin garrison and the Sunstar garrison. They were even given a set of the extremely precious dimensional wall protection system. These dimensional defense systems were all medium-sized dimensional defense systems with 100 million energy points. Even if 12 Grand Shamans attacked the dimensional defense systems at the same time, they would need to last for about 3 hours. The reason why the dimensional defense systems were installed was because they were afraid that something like this would happen. In other words, the Wu people would ignore all the defense lines and launch an all-out attack on the Taiyin Star garrison in an attempt to decapitate the Grand Shamans. As long as the dimensional defense systems were there, the Taiyin Star garrison would be able to last for 3 hours, even without the Sunstar garrison. These 3 hours would be enough for the other swordbearers to react and surround the entire Taiyin Star garrison to decapitate the Grand Shamans who were trying to decapitate the Grand Shamans. If they tried to attack the Taiyin Star garrison without breaking through the outer defense lines, the Grand Shamans would definitely be greatly suppressed by the Ju Tian Star battle formation, which could suppress about 70% of the Grand Shamans' combat power. Without 70% of their combat power, the 12 Grand Shamans would be digging their own graves when they were surrounded by countless swordbearers. When the Great Heavenly Cycle Star formation was first built, the Great Magi, who knew nothing and feared nothing, had tried to use the same tactic. Similarly, 12 Great Magi had grouped together to attack, but at that time, their target was the Guardian Mansion of the Sun. Needless to say, the result was obvious. The 12 Great Wizards were blocked by the dimensional barrier outside the Sun Guardian Mansion. They did not expect the humans to have set up such a trap. In just 20 minutes, they were surrounded by famed sword-level swordbearers who came from all over the place as reinforcements. In the end, among the 12 Grand Shamans, only Jiufeng, who was the fastest, managed to escape with her life. The other 11 Grand Shamans all died here, and the entire Shanhai Pass was completely peaceful for 2 to 3 years. Since then, Wu people never tried to use such a suicidal tactic again. However, no one knew why Wu people would use such a tactic again today. Just as these ordinary people finally managed to muster up a bit of morale, the 9-headed snakelet in the sky also launched its own attack. Its 9 heads opened their mouths at the same time, shooting out various energy attacks of different colors, directly crashing into the interior of the Lunar Guardian residence. However, before the 9 different colored energy attacks could touch the Taiyin Star garrison, they collided with an invisible barrier and disappeared without a trace, without a single spark. Hooray! Hooray! Seeing this scene, all the ordinary people cheered. Obviously, this was the effect of the Taiyin garrison's dimensional defense wall, blocking the Juying's attack. It seemed that these people could save their own lives. This was, of course, something worth cheering for. F***CK. This dimensional defense wall still has so much energy. The 9 heads of the Juying muttered in dissatisfaction. Then, all 9 heads shouted behind them at the same time, "Hey, hurry up. If Guhan comes, it'll be fun." What did this Grand Shaman mean by that? Could it be that there are other Grand Shamans behind him? The people in the Taiyin garrison thought in fear. However, as the saying goes, what you fear will happen. As soon as the Juying finished speaking, 11 different monsters gradually revealed themselves in the sky. In just a few seconds, they surrounded the entire Taiyin star garrison from all directions. F***CK. The 12 Grand Shamans are here. The ordinary people were scared out of their wits. Although a few smart people had already guessed that Wu people might still use the 12 Grand Shamans at the same time, they still could not accept it. However, when all of this really happened, they still expressed that they could not accept it. These 12 great sorcerers were really too terrifying. Everyone, don't panic. Our dimensional defense wall has a total of 100 million energy points. It can last for 3 hours. All you need to do is wait patiently for the sword-bearers to rescue you. Everyone, don't panic. Seeing that many people were so scared that they peed their pants, the more rational humans immediately began to comfort their terrified companions. With the comfort of their companions, the humans who had wet their pants felt slightly safer. That's right. According to the design of the dimensional defense wall, it could last for 3 hours. What was there to be afraid of? All they needed to do was to quietly watch the show. They could just treat it as the Wu people setting off fireworks for them. You guys are too slow. Sister Jiufeng, I think you should give me the title of the fastest person. Seeing the other 11 Grand Shamans, Juying immediately said proudly. Juying, shut your mouth. Why do you have so much nonsense to say? Xingtian glared at Juying. Juying was so scared that she did not dare to say anything. Xingtian continued, everyone, attack at the same time. Use your fastest speed to break this dimensional defense wall. Yes. The 12 Grand Shamans, including Juying, did not hesitate at all. They did not even delay for a second. Their most powerful attacks appeared in their hands. They then smashed towards the Taiyin star garrison that was protected by the dimensional defense wall at lightning speed. Hold on. You must hold on. Watching the 12 great Magi launching attacks at the Guardian Mansion at the same time, the human beings in the Guardian Mansion couldn't help but hug each other. While warming their companions with their own body heat, they silently prayed with their companions that the dimensional wall of the Guardian Mansion in Taiyin Star could hold on. The 12 attacks finally collided with the dimensional barrier. The collision of the two energies caused a violent light to erupt. This light was even brighter than the brightest flash bomb. If they hadn't closed their eyes in advance, perhaps they would have been blinded on the spot. When the bright light gradually dissipated, the humans opened their eyes abruptly. When they saw that the lake-like dimensional barrier above them was still intact, they immediately let out loud cheers. Humans are so noisy. I really want to eat them all, Juying said fiercely when she saw the humans cheering in the Taiyin Star garrison. All right, stop cheering. It looks like Lord Yingzheng has done a perfect job. They will soon become your food, little brother. Ju Feng chuckled, then turned to look at the other great witch beside him and asked with a smile, Chang'e, do you want to eat a few too? This Grand Shaman named Chang'e was completely different from the other 11 Grand Shamans. The other 11 Grand Shamans more or less had different animal symbols, but this Grand Shaman Chang'e had the appearance of a normal human. However, this Chang'e had an extremely ugly appearance. She looked like an old witch who had her face splashed with acid. If you want to eat, you can eat. It has nothing to do with me. Chang'e did not even look at Jiufeng. Continue, attack. Xingtian, who had given the order, gave another order. All the Grand Shamans stopped talking, and another round of attacks collided with the dimensional defense wall. These Grand Shamans are just wasting time. The dimensional defense wall can last for 3 hours. Before an ordinary human could finish his words, a dark energy directly collided with his body. In an instant, his body was vaporized, and no trace of his existence could be found in this world. Xiong Liu, aim better, don't ruin my delicious food. Juying yelled at the Grand Shaman Xiong Liu, who was the one who released the dark energy. At the same time, The death of this human indicated that something terrible was about to happen. The dimensional defense wall of the Taiyin Star garrison had been broken. Chapter 1020. The 12 Great Magi's attack killed half of the humans in the Taiyin garrison. The remaining half knelt on the ground and shivered. They were so scared that they forgot their names. They couldn't understand why the dimensional barrier with 100 million points of energy was destroyed after only 2 rounds of attack. Not to mention the 12 meteor level Yuan Ku, even the 12 universe level Yuan Ku wouldn't be able to last 2 rounds of attack. Brothers, don't fight with me. Let me eat a few delicious ones first. The 9-headed snakelet let out a shrill cry, and then its body shot into the Taiyin Star Guardian mansion like a rocket. His 9 heads flashed and appeared on the ground of the Taiyin garrison with 9 beautiful maids in his mouth. The fact that Juying's body could appear in the Taiyin garrison proved that the dimensional barrier outside the Taiyin Star garrison had been destroyed. Help! Help! Don't eat me! The 9 maids in Juying's mouth screamed and begged Juying to let them go. However, how could Juying listen to these poor maids? It was like holding an egg in your hand and preparing to eat it, and the mother chicken was begging you not to eat her child. Would you let go of the egg? Therefore, in an instant, the 9 maids were all cut into 2 by the 9-headed snakelet's beak and swallowed into its stomach. There were also some severed limbs on the ground. The 9-headed snakelet was also an important figure, so how could it be willing to eat food that was covered in dust on the ground? Therefore, these severed limbs were left on the ground in such a miserable manner, causing the remaining humans to let out heart-wrenching screams. Juying, we didn't come here to let you have a sumptuous meal. That Jiyu Han will be here soon. We have to destroy the throne of the Taiyin guardhouse as soon as possible. This is the most important thing. The other 11 great magi also landed on the ground of the Taiyin garrison. Hu Yi reprimanded Juying. Haha. You're being too careful. It's just an emperor-level expert. Without the obstruction of the Lunar Guardian and this broken dimensional barrier, we can destroy that emperor-level expert in one attack. Moreover, that Jiyu Han will need at least 5 minutes to get here. What do we have to be afraid of? Juying said with dissatisfaction. Shut up. We have wasted 1 minute because of you. Jiufeng also reprimanded Juying. Being reprimanded by his sister, Juying could only shut his 9 mouths again. The emperor is in the backyard. Let's destroy that emperor as soon as possible. Xingtian let out an earth-shattering roar. The rest of the great magi were encouraged by his roar and let out shrill screams. These screams seemed to contain the pain and unwillingness of being sealed for hundreds of years, as well as the excitement of being freed. They didn't eat us. The surviving maids saw the 12 terrifying great magi and walked towards the backyard. They didn't pay attention to them. After being stunned for a short while, they immediately struggled to get up from the ground. They used all their strength to escape from the Taiyin Star garrison, which used to be safe, but was now extremely terrifying. Hee hee. Such delicious food, how can I let you go? 9 heads flashed by again, and the survivors who had just escaped were once again caught in the Juying's mouth, becoming a delicacy for the Juying in a few bites. Oh, you should bring some cumin when you go out. Although the food tastes good, it's a little fishy. Juying commented as he ate. At this point, all the humans in the Taiyin garrison died, except for a few people who were hiding in a corner. Although the lunar throne was the most important thing in the Taiyin garrison, once the dimensional protection wall was broken by the Wu people, no matter how beautiful the house was, it wouldn't be able to protect them. Therefore, the lunar throne was placed in the backyard without any special care. It looked like a pretty chair in the park. But now, for the first time, 12 odd-looking senior magi showed up around the chair. These senior magi all stared at the chair with a scorching hot look, which seemed to be able to melt ice and snow, seeming to want to swallow the chair right now. Zhu Wu above. It's been hundreds of years, we finally see this broken chair. Fengbo let out an angry roar, expressing the emotions in his heart. Zhu Wu above. We are finally free. Rainmaster said. Over the past hundreds of years, the Wu people had tried to get close to the throne time and time again. In order to get close to the throne, The Wu people had paid an extremely heavy price. All of the members of the wizard tribe died and were resurrected again and again. Even the great wizard who was the best at staying alive had died more than 20 times. At the most tragic time, there was only one great wizard left in the entire wizard tribe, while thousands of members of the wizard tribe hid in the ancestral wizardland, struggling at death's door. Yet even so, the shaman tribe did not give up and launched round after round of attacks. They carried out round after round of reincarnation until they finally stood next to the throne that was of utmost importance. At this moment, the great Magi had to use their most powerful attacks at the same time and attack the throne at the same time. Then, the throne would definitely be smashed into pieces. The moment the throne was smashed into pieces, the Ju Tian star battle formation that had sealed them for hundreds of years would be destroyed in an instant. The Wu people would welcome their final liberation, then blow the horn of retaliation and revenge against the entire human race. Attack! With Xingtian's order, all the great Magi started to gather their attacks at the same time. In order to commemorate this extremely meaningful moment, all the great Magi used their most powerful attacks. For example, Huyi started to gather his sunset arrow, while Xingtian gathered a blood-red halo on his axe's blade. This was Xingtian's most powerful attack, the Slaughtering Emperor. Zhu still gathered different colored halos on his 9 heads, attacking with 9 different types of energy at the same time. Without any surprises, these 12 most powerful attacks smashed onto the lunar throne at almost the same time. Then, with the lunar throne as the center, a white light that was even more dazzling than before shone forth. This white light was so dazzling that even their creators, the 12 great Magi, had no choice but to subconsciously close their eyes to prevent themselves from being blinded by the white light. When the white light finally faded, the great Magi immediately opened their eyes impatiently, wanting to witness the moment the lunar royal clan was destroyed, the moment the Ju Tian star battle formation was destroyed, and the moment the Wu people declared their freedom. But, why did that lunar throne still appear in its original position without any damage? The eyes of the 12 senior Magi all popped out. The Throne of Moon had clearly endured their most powerful ultimate attacks, yet the Throne of Moon was still perfectly unharmed. Could it be that the Throne of Moon itself was so tough that it could withstand the ultimate attacks of 12 senior Magi? Brothers, it looks like our previous information was wrong. The strength of this lunar throne has exceeded our expectations. It can actually withstand all of our attacks, said Huyi in a deep voice. But this is not strange. After all, this is the first time we have attacked the lunar throne. It is normal for there to be an error in our information. Everyone, immediately gather your strength and prepare for another attack. This damned throne won't be able to withstand more than a few rounds of our attack. The great Magi nodded in agreement at Huyi's words. They began to gather their strength once again. But what made the great Magi feel slightly terrified was that after the second attack, the lunar throne still remained unharmed. The third time, the fourth time, the fifth time. When the sixth attack still did not have any effect, the great Magi finally began to panic. They had already sensed that things seemed to have deviated from their plan. Huyi, this is not right. I seem to feel a familiar power resisting our attacks. Ping Yi, who was the most sensitive to power, hurriedly said to Huyi. That's right. The feeling of those attacks just now was the same as when we first attacked the dimensional wall of the Taiyin garrison. All of our power was blocked by that dimensional wall, said Chang Yi immediately. Damn it, why don't we go and touch it ourselves and we will know. Zhu let out a strange cry and his 9 heads rushed towards the throne. However, when they were about 5 meters away from the throne, they were forcibly blocked by an invisible power. And this power directly penetrated into Zhu body through Zhu head. Zhu let out a strange cry and was directly bounced back. His body curled up on the ground and trembled. Obviously, he had suffered a serious injury. It's the dimensional wall. There's no mistaking it, this is the power of the dimensional wall. Rainmaster's eyes widened. It was common knowledge that the energy of the dimensional wall was best exhausted through long-range attacks. If one directly came into contact with the dimensional wall, then the energy of the dimensional wall would in turn invade Yuan Ku's body. Although this power would not directly harm Yuan Ku's life, it could make Yuan Ku's body feel numb and intense pain. This was not an exception even if Zhu Wu personally attacked. The Ju Ying's current reaction was exactly the same as when it came into direct contact with the dimensional barrier. There was actually a small dimensional barrier protecting the lunar throne's safety. "Why?" roared Xingtian angrily. "Ying Zheng, you idiot, why didn't you tell us that there was a dimensional wall protecting the lunar throne?" Xingtian vented all of his anger on the traitor called Ying Zheng. He was angry that Ying Zheng did not investigate the situation clearly and did not tell them that there was a small dimensional wall protecting the lunar throne. Don't blame him, there was no dimensional wall here in the first place. At this moment, a melodious voice suddenly rang out from a corner. This voice made Juying, Jiufeng, Quafu, and Fengbo tremble simultaneously. The person they feared the most had actually arrived so quickly. Chapter 1021. Guhan. 6 months ago, he had single-handedly turned the entire Wu people into a mess, and 9 days ago, he had single-handedly killed 3 great wizards within a few minutes. Guhan was now very famous among the Wu people. All the great wizards knew that there was such a powerful opponent among the humans. His ability was not inferior to the descendant of the bloodline, Liuonian Ling. He was the biggest obstacle for the Wu people to break through the Ju Tian Star battle formation this time. This time, in order to prevent their plan from being destroyed by this guy named Guhan, Wu people had specially spent a lot of effort to ask Fengbo to set up the Samadhi Divine Storm, so that they could use the fastest speed to quietly pass through the outer defense line of the human beings, and then directly break through the defense line of the Taiyin Star garrison with the help of the traitors. When Wu people heard that Yao Guang was going to pass the position of the Taiyin Star garrison to Guhan, as a precaution, Wu people deliberately ordered their traitors to sabotage the matter of Guhan taking over the position of the Taiyin Star garrison, so as to ensure that Guhan would not stay in the Taiyin Star garrison when the Wu people launched a sneak attack on the Taiyin Star garrison. In the end, all of this was in vain. Guhan still appeared in front of them at the right time. According to Wu people's estimation, it would take at least 5 minutes for the humans to notice the 12 great wizards sneaking into the room, and for Guhan to return to the Taiyin Star garrison from the outside of the defense line. These 5 minutes were enough for the great wizards to blow the Taiyin throne into pieces. Although it was delayed by the sudden appearance of the dimensional wall, it had only been less than 3 minutes so far. Logically speaking, it was absolutely impossible for Guhan to appear here. However, Guhan actually appeared here, as if he had already expected the Wu people to come, and deliberately waited for the great wizards to arrive in the Taiyin Star garrison. "Were you the one who placed this dimensional barrier here?" Hu Yi's expression was cold as he asked the sudden appearance of the solid frost. There was no need to rush to destroy the Taiyin throne. Since Guhan could appear here in advance, it meant that Guhan was already prepared. At this time, more sword-bearers had probably surrounded the entire Taiyin Star garrison, and the great wizards had walked right into the trap. Yes. I suddenly felt that the Taiyin garrison needed to strengthen its defense, so I borrowed a small dimensional wall system from the Yuzhong City Sword Committee. I didn't expect it to really come in handy. Guhan said with a smile. "Jiufeng, before we were locked in here, you went to all the human cities. How long do you think it would take to transport a small dimensional wall system from Yuzhong City to Shanhai Pass?" Hu Yi turned his head and asked Jiufeng with a pale face. "With the speed of humans, it would take at least 3 days to arrive here." Jiufeng answered after thinking for a while. In other words, this human already knew about this at least 3 days ago, and sent people from Yuzhong City to get this small dimensional wall system. Hu Yi's face darkened even more. His plan had been discovered 3 days ago. In fact, Jiufeng was wrong about one thing. This small dimensional wall system did not set off from Yuzhong City 3 days ago, but left Yuzhong City 2 days ago. However, the person in charge of transporting it was not a human, but Bast. As the most agile and fastest of the 3 Egyptian gods, Yuan Ku, Bast's speed was no less than the fastest human hovercraft when he ran at full speed. In addition, as Yuan Ku, Bast would not be stopped by Yuan Ku along the way, and he could run day and night without any worries. Therefore, It only took Bast a day and a half to transport this small-dimensional wall system from Yuzhong City to Shanhai Pass. Then, it was brought to the Taiyin Star garrison by a swordbearer arranged by Gu Han. Originally, Gu Han wanted to borrow it from the Sword Committee, but unfortunately, the Sword Committee was stingy. They thought that there was already a small-dimensional wall system outside the Taiyin Star garrison, so there was no need to add another one. In addition, Gu Han was not the guardian of the Taiyin Star garrison, so the Sword Committee did not care about Gu Han's request at all. As a result, Gu Han could only ask Lu Shihua, the master of the Yuzhong Sword Pavilion, to find a way to get a small-dimensional wall system from the warehouse in Yuzhong City for Gu Han. However, this was only a temporary loan to Gu Han, so Gu Han had to return this system as soon as possible. Otherwise, Lu Shihua, who used such an important item without permission, would be in serious trouble. Fortunately, this system finally played its role and successfully protected the Taiyin throne. Otherwise, when these great wizards attacked the Taiyin throne together, Gu Han was not confident that he could block all the attacks without missing anything. Once there was any mistake that caused the Taiyin throne to be attacked by the great wizards, then even if Gu Han was 10 times more powerful, the Jutian star formation would definitely be broken. Human. How did you know that we would come here today? This was a question that Xingtian could not figure out. According to Wu people's calculation, human beings should be defenseless now. Because human beings would take it for granted that the great wizards would need at least a few months to resurrect. They would never think that in a short 9 days, all the great wizards would be resurrected and launch a fatal surprise attack on the core of the Jutian star formation. There's nothing to hide from you. A few days ago, I went to your territory to look for the whereabouts of our unlucky Miss Ling. In the end, I happened to meet Great Wizard Xingtian and that Ying Zheng in the hot spring, chatting happily. I didn't want to disturb your rest, so I could only wait by the side silently for a while. Gu Han smiled very reservedly. By the way, Great Wizard Xingtian seemed to be calling my name at the end, so I didn't know whether to respond or not. It was very embarrassing. Gu Han's words immediately made Xingtian extremely embarrassed, ashamed, and angry. At that time, Ying Zheng said that Gu Han might appear around the hot spring. As a result, he roared at the hot spring, trying to call Gu Han out. At that time, Xingtian thought that it was impossible for Gu Han to be near the hot spring, and he shouted like that just to ridicule and mock Ying Zheng. He did not expect that Gu Han was really there. This immediately made Xingtian feel that he was the stupidest guy in the world. He had been ridiculed to the extreme. Go to hell, human. Xingtian was the most easily angered great wizard. Feeling that his self-esteem was greatly hurt, he immediately picked up his big axe and directly chopped at Gu Han's head. However, it seemed that Gu Han did not want to fight with Xingtian. He only slightly moved to the side and avoided Xingtian's big axe. Then, he pointed the Juzi sword in his hand at the edge of Xingtian's big axe. Are you guys in such a hurry to fight with me? I have a lot to talk to you about. Gu Han said loudly to the other 12 great wizards while easily resisting Xingtian's attack. Xingtian, stop. Since he wants to talk to us, why are you in such a hurry to fight? Xingtian thought for a while, then suddenly turned around and retracted his big axe, then silently returned to the side of the great wizard. This time, the reason why Xingtian could give up the attack so obediently was not because he respected Hu Yi, but because the other great wizards had also asked Xingtian to come back through voice transmission. If there was only Hu Yi, Xingtian might be able to ignore him, but when all 11 of his companions asked him to stop, he had no choice but to suppress his anger and return to his companions. The reason why the great wizards asked Xingtian to retreat through voice transmission was that at this moment, they had been surrounded by hundreds of famed Sword Realm swordsmen. This was the center of the Jutian Star battle formation. Under the condition that the lunar throne was not destroyed, their strength had been suppressed to only 30%. Even though the strength of these Wu people had increased by a few times, under the suppression, their strength was more or less cancelled out. These 12 great shamans knew that there was no way they could withstand the combined attacks of over 100 famed sword-level swordbearers and Ji Han, so they could only secretly transmit their voices to Xingtian to retreat. The great wizard's idea was very simple. They wanted to delay the start of the battle as much as possible, and at the same time, order the Wu people's troops, who were guarding the border, to attack the humans' defensive line. The hundreds of famed Sword Realm swordsmen here were almost 70% of the total number of famed Sword Realm swordsmen in the Taiyin Star garrison. With so many famed Sword Realm swordsmen attacking them, the strength of the front line would definitely be greatly weakened. The Grand Shaman's wishful thinking was to put pressure on the front line and force these famed sword-level swordbearers to return to the front line to defend. If these famed sword-level swordbearers were unwilling to leave, then the Grand Shamans would be more than happy to fight them to the death. Without the famed Sword Realm swordsmen, the front line would definitely become extremely fragile. Under the charge of the Wu people's army, they would not be able to hold out for long. Therefore, as long as they did their best to delay the humans here, the Wu people's army would very likely directly break through the territories of the 3 Imperial Star Garrison residences. In this way, even if all 12 of the Great Wizards died here, the Ju-Tien Star battle formation would still be broken, and they would die a worthy death. It was easy to understand why the Wu people were stalling for time, but what the Wu people could not understand was why this human was willing to cooperate with them to stall for time. Although the Wu people could not understand why, the goal of stalling for time coincided with the Wu people's goal. Therefore, the Wu people were happy to let Guhan stall for time here. Great Wizards, actually, there are 2 things I want to discuss with you. So, I want to ask which human comrade is this Ying Zheng that you all speak of? The other question is how all of you were able to increase your strength so much, and how all of you were able to be resurrected in the short span of 9 days. It really pains me to think about it. Compete. You're really interesting, human. Do you think we'll tell you something so important? Xingtian could not help but say. He felt that this Guhan was very likely to be an idiot. How could he think that he would actually tell him such a question? I didn't ask you to tell me. I just have some guesses that I'd like to seek confirmation from all of you. After saying that, Guhan clapped his hands, and 2 sword bearers escorted a human who was tightly controlled by the sealing talisman over. This human was none other than the most suspicious sword bearer, Zhu Zijian. Is this the Ying Zheng that you all speak of? Guhan pointed at Zhu Zijian and asked with a smile. Chapter 1022. Jiyu Hai. What are you doing? Let me go. What right do you have to arrest me? Zhu Zijian screamed crazily the moment he saw Guhan. You traitor of humanity. How dare you ask me why? Guhan yelled angrily. If it wasn't for you, the Taiyin Star garrison's dimensional barrier wouldn't have been left with less than 100,000 energy point. How would Yaoguang be poisoned? You're the one behind all this, aren't you? You're spouting nonsense. You're slandering me. Everyone, don't listen to this lunatic. I've never done such a thing. I'm innocent. Of course, Zhu Zijian refused to admit to any of this. He first explained to the hundreds of swordbearers around him, then turned to Guhan and screamed, Evidence. How can you slander me without any evidence? Of course I have evidence. Guhan sneered. Although you've been very careful to hide it, you've made a serious mistake. You love chewing gum too much. After saying that, Guhan took out a thin piece of tin foil from his dimensional pocket. This is the tin foil that I found in the Wu people's camp. This is the tin foil that Ying Zheng left behind when he was in the hot spring with Xingtian. If a human is in the mood to eat chewing gum in the Wu people's camp, then this human must love chewing gum very much. While speaking, Ji Yuhan projected a data sheet from his personal terminal. This is your purchase record that I've specially reviewed. In the 3 years you've been in Shanhai Pass, you've bought a total of 50,000 yuan worth of chewing gum, and the price of a piece of chewing gum is only 5 yuan. How much do you love chewing gum that you have so many purchase records? Zhu Zijian was stunned for a moment. That's right, I love chewing gum very much. But is it my fault that I love chewing gum? There are at least 100 sword-bearers in Shanhai Pass who love chewing gum. Why don't the others suspect me? What kind of **T evidence is this? Does this count as strong evidence? Guhan played another video. This video showed a rather grand banquet. Yaoguang, dressed in red, stood at the door and welcomed the endless stream of guests. These guests were obviously the sword-bearers of Shanhai Pass. Every sword-bearer would take out an exquisitely wrapped gift from their dimensional pocket and hand it to Yaoguang after entering the venue. I think you must remember this video. After the video was played, Guhan said to Zhu Zijian, "Of course I remember. This is a video of Master Yaoguang celebrating his 45th birthday 2 months ago. All of us gave Master Yaoguang a present, but someone hid in the Guardian's mansion and didn't show up. He didn't even give us the money for a present. How embarrassing. Then let's take a look." Guhan was not annoyed. He played another video. This video showed the maidservants in the Tai-Yin garrison unwrapping the presents. After the gifts were unwrapped, they were placed according to the different types of gifts. Then, they were labeled with the gift giver's label and stored in the warehouse. This video happened to show the opening of Zhu Zijian's present. When the exquisitely wrapped presents were opened, a set of exquisite wine glasses appeared in front of everyone. I wonder if anyone remembers this set of wine glasses. Ji Han purposely zoomed in on the wine cup to the maximum so that all the sword-bearers could clearly see the entire set of wine cups. I remember now. Isn't this the wine cup that Yaro Guang and the other ancient sword-rank sword-bearers were drinking with during the meeting 3 days ago? A famed sword-rank swordsman with a good memory immediately said. Only then did the rest of the sword-bearers understand. Yes, that's right. This set of wine glasses was indeed used by Yaoguang to drink the poisoned wine. Over the past 3 days, I haven't stopped investigating the poisoned wine. However, because I've been focusing on the source of the wine, I haven't made any progress yet. Later, I realized that I was focusing on the wrong thing. It wasn't the wine that was poisoned, but the wine glasses used to drink it. Guhan waved his hand. Everyone, take a look at this set of wine glasses. One of them is golden, and the rest are silver. Obviously, this golden wine glass was specially prepared for the master, and the rest of the silver glasses were for the guests. This Zhu Zijian made use of this to smear the poison on the golden wine glasses. That's why only Lord Yaoguang was poisoned, while the other 18 sword-bearers who drank the wine weren't poisoned at all. Apart from you, who gave the wine glasses to Lord Yaoguang as a gift, who else would be able to do such a thing? Hearing Guhan's words, all the sword-bearers turned to look at Zhu Zijian in unison. If they had only looked at Zhu Zijian with suspicion before, now they were looking at Zhu Zijian with 70% to 80% hatred. Clearly, they believed Guhan's words. No, I'm innocent. I didn't give this set of wine glasses at all. I gave Lord Yaoguang a set of 5 deluxe versions of Hateno Yuka-sensei's love-action movies before the apocalypse. I didn't give any wine glasses to Lord Yaoguang at all. You must believe me, I didn't give any wine glasses to Lord Yaoguang, Zhu Zijian said in a panic, refusing to admit that he had given the wine glasses to Yaoguang no matter what. With these recordings as proof, are you still going to act shamelessly? Guhan was even more furious at Zhu Zijian's refusal to admit it. He shouted, I didn't find these recordings, but got them from the highest level AI. We can let the highest level AI prove this point. After saying that, Guhan used his personal terminal to project himself into the highest level Ari's external communication window. Your Excellency, the highest level AI, may I ask if the recordings I just played are real? Without any forgery? That's right. The 2 recordings just played are all real recordings, without any traces of forgery. I can vouch for it in the name of the highest level AI. The highest level AI replied without any hesitation. Nonsense. You're talking nonsense. It's fake. It's all fake. I've already been bribed by this bastard. I really gave him a love-action movie. I didn't give the wine glasses. I didn't give them. Zhu Zijian screamed miserably. Unfortunately, the other sword-bearers looked at him with disdain. No one believed him at all. I understand now. This isn't the real highest level AI. This is just a fake highest level AI. I want to personally contact the highest level AI. I want to prove my innocence. Zhu Zijian said as he began to struggle, trying to break free from the seal. Let me go, if you have the guts, let me personally contact the highest level AI. Let him go. I want to convince him wholeheartedly. Guhan clapped his hands and the two swordbearers in charge of guarding Zhu Zijian removed the seal on his hands. Once Zhu Zijian regained his freedom, he immediately opened his personal terminal and contacted the highest level AI through the communication port on his personal terminal. Your Excellency, the highest level AI, the recording just now was fake. The recording just now was forged, right? Am I right? Zhu Zijian frantically asked the highest level AI. No, the two recordings just played are all real recordings, without any traces of forgery. I can vouch for it in the name of the highest level AI. In the end, the highest level AI simply repeated its previous answer without changing a single word. Based on everyone's common sense, the highest level AI would never lie. When Zhu Zijian personally contacted the highest level AI, the possibility of Guhan creating a fake highest level AI was completely ruled out. This time, Zhu Zijian was completely in a situation where he could not argue back. Fake, it's all fake, you guys are tricking me. I didn't do these things. Zhu Zijian's mind was completely broken. He sat on the ground and could only keep repeating these few words. Actually, there's a very simple way to prove your authenticity. Guhan revealed a chilling smile. We don't know if you're the real Ying Zheng, but our 12 friends over there definitely know if you're the real Ying Zheng. As soon as Guhan's voice fell, under the dumbfounded gaze of the other swordbearers, he directly grabbed Zhu Zijian's neck and threw him towards the 12 great wizards. Be careful. Hu Yi, who was originally seriously watching the show, suddenly soared into the sky and caught Zhu Zijian in his arms. Then, he carried him and carefully landed on the ground. Protect him. He's already done enough. Xingtian immediately handed Zhu Zijian to Chang'e, while Chang'e carefully carried Zhu Zijian in her arms. Perhaps feeling the warmth of the embrace, Zhu Zijian revealed a relieved smile the moment he entered Chang'e's arms, and slowly fell asleep. I didn't expect you Wu people to still have a conscience. I thought you would just kill this useless traitor. Guhan looked at Zhu Zijian, who was sleeping peacefully in Chang'e's arms, and said mockingly, We Wu people are not like you humans who cheat and deceive each other. As long as he makes a contribution to us Wu people, we Wu people will definitely ensure his safety. Hu Yi said calmly. That's right. This guy is the scum among us. He's the culprit behind the sacrifice of so many of our comrade. Otherwise, these Wu people would not protect Zhu Zijian. The sword ancestor, Yi Fan, who had once fought against Jiyu Han's ancient sword-tier swordsman at the conference table, said through gritted teeth. That's right. Hu Yi's actions proved that this Zhu Zijian was definitely the traitor. At this moment, all the human sword-bearers looked at the sleeping Zhu Zijian with hatred. They remembered the bitter battle 6 months ago when they lost 2/3 of their comrades, the sudden battle 9 days ago, and even Yao Guang, whose fate was unknown. All of this was thanks to this Zhu Zijian. Chapter 1023. Alright, everyone, now that all the mysteries have been solved, we've also found that damned traitor, Zhu Zijian. Now, it's time to send these senior sorcerers back to the Zhu Wu blood pool. As soon as Guhan gave the order, the famed swordsmen who had surrounded the senior sorcerers released their sword ladies at the same time. Over 100 famed swordsmen surrounded the 12 senior sorcerers. It was a spectacular scene, and the humans had the absolute upper hand. It's impossible to destroy the royal moon throne, but don't panic. Without the famed swordsmen at the front line, our people will definitely be able to break through their defense line. Let's keep these sword ladies here, and that'll be our greatest victory. Hu Yi yelled. The battle against the Wu people's senior sorcerers had officially begun. Even an idiot would know that this was going to be a very intense battle. The sword ladies were divided into groups of 10, and the 12 senior sorcerers were divided into 12 different battlefields to fight their own battles. This was an extremely important part of the battle strategy. Not only were the senior sorcerers extremely powerful individually, they could also work together to form an even more powerful battle force. Therefore, the best choice was to divide the 12 senior sorcerers into different battlefields to eliminate them. This was also the outstanding experience that the human swordsmen had learned from their battles against the Wu people's senior sorcerers over the past 100 years. However, this was also a very brutal way of fighting. The combined strength of 10 famed swordsmen was only slightly higher than that of the senior sorcerers. If it weren't for the fact that this place was located in the core area of the Great Heavenly Cycle Star Formation, which forcibly suppressed the Great Shaman's strength, which had already been raised by several times, to 70%, the 10 famed sword ladies surrounding the Great Shaman would have most likely died in an instant. However, it was foreseeable that even if the entire battle ended in victory for the humans, about 50% of the famed sword-level sword ladies in charge of the siege would be killed on this tragic battlefield. This was the conclusion of the humans' experience over 100 years. However, there was no one like Guhan who was as powerful as a famed sword wielder. Therefore, these experiences were not of much use at this time. Guhan didn't join the battle against any great shamans alone. Instead, he kept moving between the 12 battlefields. Once he discovered that something was wrong in any of the battlefields, or that a sword mistress was facing an extremely dangerous attack, Guhan would immediately join the battle and forcefully suppress the great shaman with his own strength. After the senior magus was suppressed, Guhan quickly left the battlefield and joined another dangerous one. This was a terrible way of fighting. For Guhan, the fastest way to end the battle was to first help a certain battlefield kill a great shaman, then release the dozen or so famed sword mistresses so that they could join the other battlefields. This was the fastest way to end the battle. If Guhan chose to continuously help in various battlefields, the battles would not be able to end quickly, and the entire battle would drag on for a long time. In this way, the situation at the front line would become worse. In fact, how could Guhan not know the disadvantages of this way of fighting? However, Guhan also had his own considerations. Guhan had to ensure the safety of the famed sword mistresses. Every famed sword mistress was an important asset to the humans. Every famed sword wielder needed a huge amount of resources to be nurtured. If Guhan chose to fight one by one, then the famed sword mistresses in the last few battlefields that Guhan joined would definitely be killed by the great shaman. However, if Guhan chose to take care of them all, then Guhan was confident that all the famed sword mistresses in the battlefields would be able to survive. Of course, Guhan had other considerations that he did not want others to know. This battle lasted for about 20 minutes. These 20 minutes were extremely long for every famed sword wielder. Almost all of them had experienced a situation where a great shaman's attack almost killed a sword wielder. Ah! One of the famed sword wielder screamed. His sword wielder was in charge of surrounding the great shaman, Fengbue. Fengbue also understood that this was a life-and-death situation. Hence, the Samadhi divine wind filled the surroundings around Fengbue. The sword wielder of the famed sword wielder was accidentally blinded by the Samadhi divine wind. How could Fengbue let go of such a good opportunity? He threw a wind bag at the sword wielder. The wind bag was wrapped in a layer of light yellow energy. The famed sword wielder had reason to believe that if the wind bag really hit his sword wielder's head, even if his sword wielder did not break in half, her protective shield would be shattered. At this critical moment, a golden long sword appeared out of nowhere and touched Fengbue's wind bag. The layer of light yellow energy wrapped around the wind bag was instantly shattered by the blade of the sword. Fengbue let out a strange cry of pain. He had no choice but to retract his wind bag. Only then did the sword wielder of the famed sword wielder manage to protect her protective shield. When the sword wielder of the famed sword wielder was about to thank Guhan, Guhan had already floated away, heading to another battlefield to deal with the situation. It was understandable if something like this happened once or twice. However, when it happened dozens of times in a short span of a minute, the famed sword wielder completely understood how terrifying Guhan's power was. No matter how dangerous the situation was, Guhan would always be able to arrive at the most appropriate time. Then, with the juicy sword in his hand, he would beat the arrogant great shaman into retreat, quickly resolving any possible danger. This was not a case. It was the personal experience of all the famed sword wielder. Except for a few famed sword wielder, almost all the famed sword wielder had been saved by Guhan at a critical moment. Naturally, they were filled with gratitude towards Guhan. Saving their sword wielder from the danger of being broken was as great as saving their lives. According to the rules of the famed sword wielder, if Guhan needed them, they would have to repay Guhan's kindness without any hesitation. In other words, if Guhan wanted to, after leaving Shanghai Pass, with just one word from Guhan, all the famed sword wielder under Taiyin Star Garrison would have to repay Guhan a huge favor. That meant that Guhan had a huge amount of power in his hand. The battle that lasted for 20 minutes was extremely intense. Powerful energy of various colors collided in the sky, creating explosions. From afar, it looked like a grand Olympic firework display. However, no matter how grand the fireworks were, there would come a time when they would be extinguished. 20 minutes had passed, and the situation that the sorcerer tribe had been expecting the humans to send reinforcements because the outer line of defense had been broken through did not happen. These famed sword-level sword-bearers continued to surround them. On the other hand, the Wu people, who were in charge of attacking, kept asking for help, saying that a terrifying force had suddenly appeared in the humans' defensive line. This force, which consisted of only 18 ancient sword-wielder, could easily kill a large number of junior and intermediate sorcerers. Even if a heaven sorcerer attacked, these ancient sword-wielder would be able to defend themselves. In order to resurrect the Grand Sorcerer, the Wu people who had been killed in the battle 9 days ago were not resurrected. Therefore, this time, the Wu people's normal strength was far weaker than before. The humans and the Wu people were completely locked in a stalemate outside the defensive line. It would take at least 4 to 5 hours to determine the victor. However, the Grand Sorcerers who had been fighting hard here could not even last a minute, let alone 4 to 5 hours. The first to suffer was not any other Grand Sorcerer, but the Grand Sorcerer Juying, who had been the most arrogant and had eaten the most humans. Due to Guhan's strict orders, the famed sword wielder lying in ambush could only watch as the normal humans were eaten by Juying. In the end, when they fought with Juying, these famed sword-level sword ladies attacked Juying without any regard for their own lives under the command of their sword wielders. In addition, Juying was one of the weakest Grand Sorcerers. Therefore, in the 20 minutes of battle, Juying's 8 heads had all been chopped off by the famed sword wielder. Juying, who only had 1 head left, planned to use the same tactic again, to self-destruct and perish together with these sword wielder. These famed sword wielder, who had long been in a frenzy of killing, did not notice Juying's intention to self-destruct. Therefore, by the time they realized it, it was already too late. Juying's head was about to explode in the next second. If they were affected by the explosion, at least 2 or 3 of the 10 famed sword wielder would be broken. Even if the rest were not broken, their personal shields would be completely shattered, and they would not be able to join in the fight against the other Grand Sorcerers. Be careful. At this critical moment, Guhan once again arrived in time. Without hesitation, he chopped off Juying's last head with his golden Juzi sword, then sent Juying's head flying thousands of meters away with the Juzi sword, as if he was hitting a baseball. Although Juying's head still exploded in the end, not a single hair on the sword wielder was harmed. Thank you, Lord Guhan, for saving our lives. These sword wielder hurriedly expressed their gratitude to Guhan. Let's not talk about this for now. You, join in the fight against Hu Yi. Under Guhan's command, these sword wielder, who had successfully killed Juying's head, once again threw themselves into the fight against Hu Yi. In the following few minutes, Quafu from Qiong tribe, Xiong Liu from Candle Join tribe, Fongbo from Gomong tribe, Yusha from Gonggong tribe, Chief-elect from Shebi Corpse tribe, Ping Yi from Ayu Shou tribe, and Fei Lian from Yanzi tribe, all died under the attacks launched by sword wielder one after another. Only Jiufeng from Xianming tribe, Chang Yi from Hutu tribe, Xingtian from Zhurong tribe, and Hu Yi from Dejiang tribe were still struggling. In contrast, not a single one of those human sword wielder was broken. They were all perfectly unharmed, just like an unbelievable legend. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.